Commander Zena Cardman, pilot Michael Fincke, JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui, and Roscosmos' Oleg Platonov. I see some Crew 11 shirts down there. And that's Zena Cardman that we see on the left, Mike Fincke on the right. And I've seen Zena do that a number of times, making the heart symbol with her hands. Certainly sending her love to her family who have supported her.
Yeah, you don't get there on your own. None of these individuals have gotten there on their own. It takes the support and love of family and friends and colleagues, and it's a team sport.
You see Mike Fincke on the right there, the pilot. He is flying along in his kit a gamasa, which he tells us his wife is of Indian origin, and the gamasa is used in the state of Assam as kind of a scarf, and so he's taking that with him. He's taken a scarf from his side of the family, that side of the family, for all 4 of his flights. A token certainly of their blessing on this flight today, but also has sentimental purposes.
Yeah, little bits and pieces of home that we can take along with us. And you know, I mentioned that we're big into traditions and rituals and superstitions, and you'll find that lots of crew members have their little token of good luck. You can see them connecting to that cooling air. They've been off of it for a few minutes now, and so a little warm in the Florida air. Last goodbyes as the doors come down, and then immediate family will be able to come up to the windows after they crack them.
Yep, they're going to roll those windows down a little bit and give some last words before launch and before they depart the operations and checkout building. Inside Zena's Tesla there, she'll have the flight surgeon going with her.
Yeah, and you can see the lengths we go to preserve that quarantine. You know, you wait till they maintain their distance when they were outside the cars. Once they get inside the cars, there's still some distance. All the personnel that are in the cars with them have also been in quarantine this entire time. So it's not just the crew members that are in quarantine for a couple weeks. It's a group of several dozen people that have to quarantine.
I want to point out Secretary Sean Duffy is here. He is NASA's acting administrator. Also Secretary of Transportation here supporting the launch today, and the crew there at the walkout. He's the gentleman with the glasses and the blue suit coat, which I think is second from the right. There he is. A shot over his shoulder. He just took the reins of NASA just a few weeks ago. He's doing so on an acting basis until an administrator can be nominated and then confirmed by Congress. A look inside the window, Zena Cardman giving some waves. And I imagine emotions must be running high.
How can they not? You've been waiting for this moment for a long time. and now you've said your goodbyes. It's tough to say goodbye to to family that you're not going to see for a while, but you're also excited to get that car rolling and get on with it.
And indeed, they are off. Crew 11 on the road to launch pad 39A. The Teslas are rolling out from the Neil Armstrong building, escorted by security for the 20-minute drive.
Lyoseals are removed and installation is complete. This is about 10 minutes behind schedule. Again, we have plenty of margin to our green light time. Team is making up time.
Well, that's a good call out there. We were running 15 minutes behind, but as you heard from the launch director, they have made up 5 minutes. Now currently will continue to work this, and the flight crew right now headed out to the pad. Their next stop, a rocket, waiting to launch them into orbit. No pressure, just your average commute today, Nick.
It's not your average commute. You got this police escort with helicopter support, and you get to run every red light and run every stop sign. Absolutely,
it's a beautiful sight there. Of course, I say that in jest. This is a very special road trip from the astronaut crew quarters out to the launch pad, where they will join up with their spacecraft and rocket. We want to learn about this crew. We want to share their story in their own words. So let's hear from the commander of Crew 11, Zena Cardman, as she shares her path from field science to spaceflight.
I think in a lot of ways, science and exploration is just innate to us as human beings. That's why toddlers ask so many why questions. It's just part of who we are. In many ways, I think trying to explore space generates solutions to problems that we didn't even know we had. My name is Zena Cardman, and I am the commander of NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. I was born in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, but grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia. I grew up almost like an only child. I have 2 older brothers, but the younger of the 2 actually went off to college when I was 5 years old. And so I learned to play in my backyard a lot, play with friends, use my imagination, and explore the natural world around me. I studied biology as an undergraduate student. This is largely because I had a really excellent high school biology teacher who inspired me to pursue research on my own, even as a high school student. But while I was at college, I also got to know microbiology. I got to know geosciences and chemistry. I wound up doing a lot of research in an oceanography marine sciences department and studying in remote locations like Antarctica. I also, while I was an undergraduate, became a creative writing minor, and I've always really valued that chance to study the creative side of my brain and explore our natural world through that side as well. I love being an astronaut right now because there are many pathways to get to the International Space Station. We spend long duration periods, so many months long, living and working on board that space station, and it's really focused on research. A lot of that research is on our home planet, and a lot of that research is on us as human subjects. I'm very excited to be actually a test subject for a lot of the medical research that we're doing on board the ISS. I've signed up for a very large, all-encompassing medical study called CIPHER, and this, I think, is going to be critical as we start thinking about going for longer durations and farther places like the Moon and Mars. My role as commander is to bring out the best in my crewmates from the moment we start training till the moment we get back to Earth and then some. And so I'm always thinking about that larger mission overview and how my crewmates are doing and what we can do for each other. Spaceflight, by definition, requires collaboration and requires more than one person, and the chance to be part of something much larger than myself has been humbling and inspiring and deeply fulfilling. Even since I was a child, looking up at the stars, looking up at the cosmos is inspiring. It helps me answer questions like, what are we doing here? Who are we? Where are we? I don't think we grow if we don't challenge ourselves. I think that's true for myself, it's true for teams, and it's true for us as a society and as a species. We have to take some risks, we have to challenge ourselves in order to push ourselves, and I can't wait to see what we discover during my career and for generations to come.
A very capable and talented Zena Cardman, the commander of Crew 11. Next up, astronaut Michael Fincke, a veteran of 3 missions and 4 spacewalks, as he reflects on what keeps him coming back to space.
Human beings, part of our nature, part of who we are, our identity is explorers. Because every time we explore, we improve our lives and our situations. It's just natural. My name is Mike Fincke, and I'm the pilot for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, home of the mighty Steelers, and it was a great time to grow up, lots of great educational opportunities, a time that was tough economically, but a place where we knew that dreams could come true. When I was like 2 and 3 years old, my parents would wake me up from whatever nap I was taking to watch moon landings. We did many moon landings back in the 60s and early 70s, and that made a big impression on me. So I knew that back then, even when I was like 3, that I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go walk on the moon. I wanted to go explore space. So I learned to read so I could read more about space, and the more I read, the more excited I became. When I was in high school, I didn't know what engineering was. I knew what math and science were, physics. I was kind of good at that. Math, I took a leap of faith and went to an engineering program at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, thankfully paid for by an Air Force ROTC scholarship, and then hustling with side gigs on the weekends. And I got to study airplanes and rockets, 2 of my favorite things. So I was able to graduate from MIT with 2 degrees, and then the summer after graduation, I had a really wonderful opportunity to study in Soviet Union. Fortunately, I'd studied Russian language, so I knew enough Russian to go with some colleagues, and we spent the summer at Moscow Aviation Institute studying cosmonautics. And then I spent the next year at Stanford University getting a master's in aeronautics and astronautics. I love the space station. I helped build it. I helped the first modules get ready here on planet Earth, and have had the joy of living aboard the space station for 2 long-duration missions so far. We've learned from the International Space Station that space is a great place to really understand more about the universe. When we are aboard the International Space Station, we're still gravitationally connected to planet Earth, but we're free-falling, so like we're in microgravity. So you take that big G out of the equation, and then you can find out what's really going on physically. We're also outside the atmosphere, so we can look to the universe beyond us without atmospheric interference. When I'm on a spacewalk, I can look out to the whole universe, and I can see how small our planet is and how big and wonderful the rest of the universe is. And it's calling to us. We need to explore and go see the whole universe that's out there. Space exploration is something that really speaks to me as a person, right? We all kind of have our passions. And for me, since I was like 2 and 3 years old, I wanted to go to space, explore space. And I've had a chance to do that. Half my life I've been an astronaut. I've really, really enjoyed exploring space.
Pilot Mike Fincke and his team, as you just saw them pass the vehicle assembly building where Artemis 2, a moon rocket, is being stacked. Let's hear now from JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui on returning to the station, representing Japan, and what this mission means to him.
I think humankind has a desire to explore and also expand our area of activities. Space is a great place to explore because Earth is so small. We still have unknown places, but Earth is, generally speaking, so small compared with space. My name is Kimiya Yui. I'm a mission specialist for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. I was born in very, very small village in Nagano Prefecture. So up there, I was able to see very, very beautiful stars in night skies. When I was a little boy, I did stargazing, and I loved stars. I really want to know everything on our universe, and I want to go everywhere as long as I live. When I was already like 10 years old, I already wanted to become an astronaut or astronaut. I graduated from the National Defense Academy, and after that I entered Japanese Air Force, Japan Air Self-Defense Force, then become a fighter pilot, then a test pilot, and then became an astronaut. We do science in space because we have constant microgravity in the ISS. We cannot achieve that condition on the Earth. Space station actually contributing our knowledge, and also we can produce new materials or medicines in order to make our future brighter. Going to Moon or Mars is very difficult, so we need to test our materials, and ISS is a great test bed. So Crew 11, we are going to have a lot of experiments on ISS, and JAXA especially, we are going to have a new cargo vehicle, HTV-AX. The vehicle itself is a little bit lighter, but we can carry more stuff to the ISS. 10 years ago, I went to space for the first time. It's changed a lot. And for astronauts, it became much more convenient to live. For example, we didn't have a good place for cooking. Now we have gallery. I was able to see a lot of stars and also beautiful Earth or moon. This mission inspired me, and I really want to pass that actually inspiration to other people on the ground. ISS is one of the best examples to have a dream and work together and make the dream come true. So if you see ISS in the night sky, please think about your dream, about how to make your dream come true.
And finally, Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, sharing his thoughts as he prepares for his very first flight to space.
Бесконечный космос открывает бесконечные возможности для человечества, поэтому есть необходимость осваивать Солнечную систему, осваивать просторы за пределами Солнечной системы. А для того, чтобы это сделать в будущем, мы должны закладывать эту базу. My name is Oleg Platonov, and I am a mission specialist for NASA SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. Я родился в большом индустриальном городе в России, в городе Челябинске. Это моя родина. Я занимался в патриотических кружках, связанных с авиацией и космонавтикой, поэтому уже в мое детство я задумывался о космосе. У меня много целей в этом полете. Прежде всего, я хочу полететь на мощной огромной ракете в космос, долететь до Международной космической станции, сесть возле большого иллюминатора на станции, посмотреть на нашу красавицу Землю, и это будет вдохновлять меня работать все лучше и лучше. Мы можем получать новые данные о нашей Земле, о Солнечной системе, о космических лучах, о нашей Вселенной, о жизни микроорганизмов в космосе, о здоровье человека, о получении новых лекарств, о путях улучшения конструктивных материалов и так внутренняя потребность человека исследовать все, что находится вокруг него. Хочется узнать все новое, новое и новое, расширяя горизонты своего знания, что границы открыты, что мы можем летать в космос, что мы можем лететь дальше, все дальше и дальше, за пределы нашей Земли, за пределы Солнечной системы. И это будет вдохновлять уже не только нас, но и следующие поколения.
And those are all 4 members of Crew 11. If you're just joining us, we are currently T-minus 3 hours and 1 minute until liftoff of those 4 individuals who make up Crew 11. Liftoff to the International Space Station. And this is their ride, a Falcon 9 rocket with a spacecraft called Endeavour sitting at the very top. That crew walkway that you see connecting the launch tower and the rocket, astronauts will soon be walking across that walkway and into their spacecraft to get strapped in to go to space. Right now, they just arrived at the base of the pad, and here is a beautiful view of Launch Pad 39A, which sits just 500, 600 feet away from the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, the beach there, which, as you can see from the calm state of the ocean, we have very light winds, we have sunshine, we have a beautiful day for launch. 90% go is what our launch weather officer is reporting out for weather conditions at the time of liftoff. That time, 12:09 and 24 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. As we gaze up at the sky, seeing just some very thin cirrus clouds up ahead, those not a problem at all when we get ready to launch. We're green across the board right now, running just a little bit behind on the procedures out at the pad. At last check, about 10 minutes, but SpaceX crews are working diligently to catch that time up. And this mission operation timeline, it should be noted, has plenty of margin in it. What you're about to see now is the astronauts walking up to their rocket to get a look at the 1.8 million pounds of thrust that can be generated by this machine as it takes them up into space. That moment coming up in just a few minutes, Nick.
Yeah, they just pulled up to the launch pad. Got about 3 hours until liftoff, and so this is your last bathroom break before you're strapped into a seat and hostage for the next 3 hours. So much needed respite, and then but it's once you ride that elevator up to the top, it's just this stark contrast. You see your rocket up close and personal, and it's this amazing feat of engineering. And then the backdrop is the beautiful Florida coast and the waves crashing onto the beach and a breeze in the face. And it's just a spectacular moment once you get to the top of the launch tower.
You painted quite a word picture there, and we are about to see what that looks like through the eyes of the astronauts as we document their journey up the launch tower, across the walkway, and into their capsule. In the meantime, we want to take some questions that we've been asking and getting and receiving from our audience that's watching around the world. Those who have put their questions forth to our astronaut co-host, Nick Hague, a brigadier general with the Space Force and a NASA astronaut. Austin asks, my son, Knox, age 8, would like to know, how do you get to the space station when it orbits around the Earth so fast? And that is fast.
Countdown. Advanced team have completed their preps for crew arrival, and crew are heading up the tower on schedule.
That's great news. Sounds like they made up all of that 10 minutes that they were behind. That's a great call out. Yes, station goes 17,500 miles per hour. How are you going to catch up with that?
Yeah, so Knox has got it. He's got his finger right on it. You've got to start going that fast. So the rocket's going to take off going vertical, and it's accelerating. But after a few minutes into flight, the rocket pitches over and is basically going horizontal and continuing to accelerate as it falls back down toward the Earth. And so you're turning all of that fuel, the 1.8 million pounds of thrust that you were talking about, you're turning all of that into velocity. So right now they're going 0 miles per hour. After 9 minutes of lighting that rocket, you're going to be going 17,500 miles per hour. And it's timing. So that's why we're counting down 2 hours and 56 minutes to liftoff to the second, because that's when the Earth rotates underneath the International Space Station's orbital plane, and then that's the moment that we have to take off. So it's an instantaneous launch window.
And that instantaneous launch window at exactly 12:09 and 24 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. You talk about catching up to the ISS. The day that we have and the time gets them there because we are in the same orbital plane. Our first two astronauts clear from the bio break. Zena Cardman, Mike Fincke walking out and getting a look at their rocket, arm in arm.
It's a tall rocket, so it's hard to actually look up that. So you've got to lean back to be able to really see it.
You know what? It looks like Mike Fincke, who's on the right-hand side, has a little more lean. What's interesting about him is he's wearing an upgraded suit called an R2. The Zena, let's go, just circling her arms. Let's just go.
Yeah.
But he's wearing an upgraded suit that SpaceX says has more mobility and more flexibility in it.
Well, he just demonstrated that.
Well,
I
he
guess.
Sure did, didn't he?
Oh, no, Zena wasn't going to be outdone. No, it's awesome to see them, the excitement, the emotions that you feel as you're getting ready to do something like launch into space. Astronauts are humans. they feel all those same emotions, and so it's fun to see some of the excitement come out and on display.
Spillover right there on the launch pad, because there will be time for things to get serious once they get into the cabin. We turn on the launch escape system and start flowing propellants. But right now, just like you said, a nice moment at the base of the launch pad where those emotions spill out. But talking about the suit, Mike Fincke is the only one who is wearing, you can contrast his suit with Zena's. It looks exactly the same, but it's constructed differently. It has a circumventual zipper as opposed to a vertical zipper. So as you know, you got into your spacesuit like a onesie. His spacesuit has been upgraded and redesigned and has that circular zipper that allows 7 inches of flexibility in the suit, so you can adapt it to different body sizes. Whereas the suit that you wore and that Zena is wearing and the rest of the crew has to be tailor-made, and there's not much adjustment on those.
Yeah, and it's also a demanding engineering challenge because it has to be mobile when it's unpressurized, but then when you inflate this, you also have to create a volume where you can be inside of this rigidized suit and be in there comfortably for hours if need be. And so that's a challenge to get a suit that does that. And so this next generation of suit is designed to be able to accommodate that wider range a little easier.
It'll be good for the astronauts, more comfortable, more flexible, especially, as you mentioned, when you pressurize it, which I guess it's like a giant, just human-sized balloon. This is a great shot from our flight operations team here at Kennedy. You can see the 2 crew members, somewhat small, getting ready to enter the crew access arm. And here they come, Commander Zena Cardman and pilot Mike Fincke, getting ready to board Dragon Endeavour. And they are all smiles.
Ear-to-ear grins. It's awesome to see.
And what a beautiful vista behind them as you look out at the views of the spaceport. Mike just gave us the 2 guns. He's a character. Now, before they get into the spacecraft, some important business at hand here, wanting to make sure that no FOD or foreign object debris goes into the spacecraft. So the 2 suit technicians and the closeout crew there, making sure that they take care of that, as well as this tradition right here, Nick.
Yeah. Got to sign that wall. That means you're going. And so every crew that's launched off of, commercial Crew Dragon launched off of 39A has been able to sign around that NASA meatball. And it's little moments like that that connect you with the legacy of the program and make you feel connected in a way where you understand, hey, I'm taking the next step, and it's an important step. There's a lot of people that got me to the point where I can take this step, and hopefully there's a lot of people coming after me that are going to continue to take steps.
Countdown. Crew are in the white room, and this is on schedule.
You'll hear these audio call-outs from time to time from the crew operations and resource engineer with updates, and we'll pause to listen to them. Here are the 2 mission specialists now doing their rocket recline, looking up at their ride.
I think they studied technique from Zena and Mike because they had it down.
Seemed like kind of like a rock and roll kind of pose, didn't it? They will be riding the other elevator. This, of course, is Heritage Space Shuttle equipment. Those elevators, they used to just have numbers in them. And they're headed up to the 275-foot level, so 28 stories high are the crew on the left, all the way up at the top. The crew at the bottom now getting ready to ascend that distance. SpaceX changed the buttons inside a little while ago to have the top button for 275 say Space. Yeah. Did you punch it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty cool. I would like to go to space. Can you press space for it? Did your fellow crew member say, can space please? Can you press that button for me?
Make everybody wait uncomfortably long.
That is something you would do.
Maybe.
So Mike, carefully getting into the spacecraft here, which that takes a bit of physical effort, right? You don't want to touch that seal because that is what protects you from the hostile environment of space.
Yeah, absolutely. That side hatch is going to stay closed the entire time you're in space. The next time you're going to open that is when you're bobbing around in the Pacific, and the recovery teams open it up to get you out. Of course, we're going to do leak checks on that here in a little bit, and it's important to be able to pass that. So you're hyper vigilant about hardware, and you mentioned that transition to seriousness as you're walking out that gantry. That's when you start to build and flip that switch in your mind of, okay, this is spaceflight hardware. This is the equipment that's going to keep me alive. You become that hyper vigilant person that you need to be.
Last two crew members there, the mission specialists, walking down the crew access arm. And the final two crew members, mission specialists Oleg Platonov and Kimiya Yui, arm in arm, thumbs up, ready to go. Split screen there, looking outside and inside the White Room. You mentioned the mission. This crew is leaving the ground with a baseline of at least 6 months, half a year in space, ladies and gentlemen. But they are being considered, and research and study and certification process is underway to expand this to an 8-month increment, 2 months longer. And so the plan is for the commercial crew program, which is here at NASA, is to certify the spacecraft Dragon to be able to support them for a return 8 months later. We know they can live on station for 8 months. We've had astronauts live there for a year. But that is a long-duration space flight. And so the hope is that they certify them for 8 months and they can return 8 months later, hoping to get it by October.
Yeah, it's a 6th flight of Endeavour, and there's a lot of things that need to be looked into. From a crew perspective, the mindset has to be, I'm going for 8 months. And then if it ends up not turning out that way, then that's I guess a pleasant surprise or unfortunate, depending on your perspective at the moment, because every day in space is a gift. No, it'll be exciting for them. And like you said, we've had people up there. One of my crew members, Christina Cook, was up there a year. She launched with me on MS-12. So we know how to do it, and we know how to keep people healthy when they stay up there that long. It really comes down to expectations and expectation management with crew members as well as families, as well as the entire team that has to support this particular mission, because it's not just the crew and their families, but that entire support network is on call while they're on orbit.
That's an interesting point to think about. I hadn't thought about just how that kind of puts the family, as you mentioned, on call as that entire time. They have the moments where they get to connect with you via video phone and high-speed connection, but as long as you're up there, they know that you're not here on Earth. You're in space, and you and your crew are being supported by this international laboratory, which has been doing it for 25 years come November 2nd. You're watching live launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11 launch to the International Space Station. I'm Daryl Nail, and I'm joined by NASA astronaut and Brigadier General Nick Hague. We've counted down about an hour and 20 minutes so far, and we're cruising to liftoff. T-minus 2 hours and 44 minutes. T0 is 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time. A look at the signatures on the wall inside the White Room. And I would love to see if we can make out my co-host's signature there.
You
Nick
won't.
Hague?
You won't.
No?
I launched off Slick 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Indeed you did.
Yeah, so there's 2 lonely signatures over there on Space Launch Complex 40 right now.
That's right, and that was a late change, and my apologies for that, because you were initially supposed to launch off of 39A.
Yes, it was. We were the first to launch off. We were actually the first humans to launch off of that launch complex. The certification process, you mentioned the certification process for extending the life of Endeavour. Same kind of thing happens for the ground station as the launch complexes, and they were able to get that process done in time to support us to be able to launch off there. So it was a thrill to be able to be a member of the Space Force and launch off of a Space Force launch complex.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you're the only 2 signatures there.
Yeah. Well,
So,
hopefully
I mean,
we can
that's
fix that. Hopefully we can
absolutely.
fix that.
Yes, absolutely. SpaceX has 2 launch pads here that are human rated for space flight, and that gives them great redundancy, great capability as well for NASA to have access to. Right now, the teams are working in parallel. The crew members inside Dragon getting settled into their seats that they will ride up into space, while outside, the closeout crew handles the matter of making sure that the seal's integrity around the side hatch is maintained. And then once they get them all settled and finish up their work inside with the crew, they'll depart. You can see number 22 still inside. The support crew will come out of the capsule, and they'll shut that hatch that you see right there, that side hatch. As Nick mentioned, when that is shut and they've secured it, they will leak test it to make sure it can withstand the rigors of the harsh environments of space. But in order to see and communicate with the crew that's inside, both of the closeout crew members here taking a knee.
Yeah, you can see a couple of the ninjas inside. They're, principally getting everybody strapped in nice and snug. Then they're also providing them with some of their personal equipment. You see the white satchels that they'll wear on their thigh. It's a place to put their tablet, as well as some writing utensils and some other things that they may need in terms of personal gear. And make sure everything's situated, because once you're strapped in, they don't want you coming out of those straps until you're floating around.
Certainly want all that in order and in place for the very exciting ride up into space, but it's also going to be a long one, Nick. This is a 38.8-hour phasing, which means from the time that they lift off to the time that they dock to the International Space Station, almost 40 hours in space. This is the longest ride to space so far for NASA's commercial crew program, flying the Dragon, which we are now in our 12th flight, Crew 11, the 11th operational mission, but we have to include Demo 2, which was the first test flight.
Yeah, 40 hours is a long time. So it only takes, less than 10 minutes to get to space. And then, this gets back to the question before of how do you catch up to the space station? Well, we phasing is the word that we use, but essentially in different orbital altitudes you move different speeds, and so we adjust the orbital altitude of the Dragon capsule to allow it to catch up to the space station. And in this case, it's going to take 40 hours to do. Most of that time, a few minutes after they have arrived on orbit, they're going to be able to take their spacesuits off, and then essentially you're camping out inside the Dragon capsule, waiting for those 40 hours to elapse so that you can dock and open the hatch and get to work.
That's astronaut Nick Hague, commander of Crew 9, flew just a couple missions ago for NASA. Also flew...
SpaceX, Dragon, ready for com checks.
SpaceX copies, we are configured, so seat 1, seat 2, seat 3, seat 4, com check.
Seat 1, loud and clear.
2, loud and clear.
3, loud and clear. Seat 4, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Umbilical com check complete. Report when ready for seat rotation.
So you just heard from each one of the crew members on board as they went through all of their communications with the Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, otherwise known as the Core. You heard him communicating with each one of the crew members just now. As I was mentioning, Nick Hague flew 2 Soyuzes to space. The first one didn't make it to the station, was an in-flight abort, came back down to the ground. You flew again the second time. On MS-12, you did make it to station. We are getting ready to do the suit leak checks, but first, we want to take some social questions as we go along. Nick Hague is our astronaut expert at the ready. If you want to submit a question, please do. We would love to hear from you. Just use hashtag AskNASA on the platforms that we have on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Twitch. And we have a question in the lower right hand of your screen. Yes, Benny asks, what was the hardest part in becoming an astronaut?
I think that's a different answer depending on which astronaut you ask. There's so many things that we have to train to be able to do, whether that's, operate high-performance jets, aircraft, spacecraft, or learn the engineering behind all the systems on board of those that keep us alive, to the medical support that you might need to be able to provide because you need to be the doctor for the crew. But I think for me, the single most challenging aspect was learning a second language at the age of 38. And, getting selected, and the first day on the job, I started my Russian language training because to be on board the space station, you have to be able to speak English and Russian, regardless
it's a requirement.
Regardless of where you come from. So, Kimiya, native Japanese, but he has to be able to speak English and Russian.
Right.
And so it's amazing how difficult it is if you didn't grow up learning a second language very young, how hard it is to rewire your brain late in life.
Dragon, ready for seat rotation.
Copy, ready for seat rotation. All other teams are ready, so we will be initiating seat rotation now.
Copy.
And so you're about to see those seats articulate upwards. This is their entry position, but they will now be articulated into launch position so that they are resting on their backs and able to see those screens just above them, just above the heads of the pilot and commander. You can see Zena Cardman currently touching some of the buttons in the screen on just ahead of her, the heads-up display. And there they go. Getting some waves from the camera person who is on the launch tower right before they back out and shut the hatch. Boots up.
Yep, that position is important because when you're launching, you want to make sure that that G-force is coming through your chest because it's easier for your body to handle. But then when you're landing and the impact of landing, you want to make sure that you're in that more upright orientation. It's all for crew safety. It does allow them to see the displays better.
Dragon SpaceX, seats are in the launch position. With that, you are go for Section 2, suit leak check preparation.
And now that they can see those displays better, they can start operating them. And so Zena's going to step through suit leak checks here with the rest of the crew.
I did not know that they articulated them down for re-entry.
Yeah, after the main chute's open, then they will they rotate down.
How about that?
Actually, it's once you come back through a certain G level on re-entry, that's the trigger, and then they rotate, and then you
automatically come down?
Yeah, you get chutes and everything else.
Now that we have Crew 11 seated inside of the spacecraft, we want to go back and hear the story of your first spaceflight, Nick, which was, to say the least, an adventurous one. One that did not end with you getting to the International Space Station, but rather an in-flight abort. This helps us underscore just how important safety is in this moment as the astronauts prepare. So here you are, a number of years ago, getting ready to launch for MS-10, giving a wave goodbye. Talk me through your first spaceflight.
Yeah, you know, when I look at this picture, it almost snaps me straight back. It's a beautiful fall day in the steppes of Kazakhstan. You know, we're on, you know, the same launch pad there that Yuri Gagarin launched into space on. And so you feel that deep connection, that legacy I talked about, the human exploration of space. And so we're getting ready to walk up to the elevator. There's a few stairs. It's a turn back photo op and wave to the management that's taken you all the way up to the base of the rocket that's sitting there, that's white with frost because it's full of rocket fuel at that point, and you're on your way. So, I mean, it's everything you dream of. It's at that point, I've spent 40 plus years dreaming about that day happening, and then liftoff.
And
Copy, tear complete. You have a go for Section 3, suit leak check.
So as we listen in, the suit leak checks,
Go for Section 3.
they will pressurize the suits of the crew inside the cabin. Very important matter. As you're lifting off here, what are you feeling?
You know, in many respects, the feeling of the Soyuz lifting off the launch pad is very similar to Dragon. The rockets are about the same size. You feel just kind of this slowly increasing pressure of being pushed down into your seat. The rumble and the kind of the subtle vibration as you're going, but it's pretty smooth. You know, I'd liken it to being in an electric car and somebody just kind of smashing the accelerator, pushing you into your seat, and you're off. And it was, you know, a smooth ride for the first 2 minutes leading up to the point where those external boosters you see on the base of the rocket are empty, and then they need to separate from the rocket.
And that's what led to this moment right here, Nick, when those boosters didn't do quite what they were supposed to.
Yeah, one of them didn't. They're supposed to propel themselves away from the center, the core stage. One of them that didn't do that and actually impaled the core stage, caused it to essentially disintegrate in that split second. So we're 30 miles above the Earth, going 4,000 miles an hour, kind of pointed straight up. As that happens, it tilts us a little bit, and in that second in which all that occurs, the launch escape system pulls us, my crewmate Alexeyev Chinin, the commander on the mission, and I, to safety.
And that shot is the shot before. If we look back to that one, it's blurry because that's a screenshot from just how violently things were shaking.
Yeah,
inside?
there was in that instant, the indications to us are a flashing red light, a sign, an alarm's going off, and then there's a little red indicator that says there's a rocket emergency, and then you're also being shaken kind of side to side for a second or so. And then it's peaceful, because at that point we're going so fast, we've come off, we're just kind of coasting uphill in this slow tumble to the edge of space. And I can remember looking out as we got to the top of that trajectory and seeing the dark black of space and the curve of the Earth below, and thinking to myself, well, we're not going to get there today.
Just not going to make it.
Yeah. And so, in the moment, you have those little moments where the reality of the situation pops out. Now it's, it starts to set in, okay, what do I need to do to survive? And that's get back into the procedures.
Right. And so that view we saw from looking up in the sky, your rocket is coming apart. You no longer can ride that into space. It's done. Now you're on the emergency systems. And you come down back to Earth. And that's you on the right, in the middle, right middle, hugging your wife.
Yeah.
And that looks like quite the deep embrace.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the moment when you're responding, the training kicks in, you're able to compartmentalize all of the emotion of the situation. It's in the aftermath of that, that's less than 6 hours after we had launched, that we're back at the aerodrome there, and that's when the emotions, you're human, that's when it comes out. And Katie had witnessed all of that and gone through that roller coaster ride at the same time, along with my kids and my family that were all there, with less information than I had, because I was going through it. There was, probably 20 minutes where she didn't know what the outcome was.
Dragon, we see the same. Closeout team will perform final closeout steps and then exit the capsule. You can proceed to section 4, side hatch close, and report when ready to close hatch.
And just a quick note.
Copies. Proceeding section 4, Wilco.
We are still tracking the operations inside the Dragon Endeavour that you see there. They are doing checkouts of the suits, pressurizing them, getting ready for launch. As we listen to a very important story that Nick Hague just told us about surviving an in-flight anomaly where his rocket came apart, but the launch escape system for Soyuz saved his life and the life of his crewmate and brought them back to their families.
Yeah, the way you phrase that's important. The launch escape system. The engineers that developed the escape system, the people in the factory that assembled it, all of these people that I don't get to meet or would not normally get to meet. The space program, the human exploration of space, is built on trust. Trust in that everybody who's got a job is committed to being perfect in that job. And it's not just the crew that rides on top of the capsule, but it's everybody. And you never know when your decision, your responsibility, your action is going to be the one that saves the day.
Absolutely, and that's why you often hear so many times the engineers uttering how important it is to get the job right, to do it right, to make sure everything is ready for launch. And this crew has their launch escape system. We will go through their checks, we'll check the health of it, and we'll also arm it for launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
SpaceX, Dragon, loud and clear.
Core has you loud and clear. Tedra's comm check is complete. Stand by for comm checks with DC, MD, and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, DC on countdown 1, comm check.
DC, Dragon, loud and clear.
DC loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with MD.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1, comm check.
MD, Dragon, loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear as well. Stand by for comm check over Dragon to ground.
You're listening to communication
Dragon,
checks
MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
through each of the 3 paths to this spacecraft.
MD, Dragon, loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1 with a comm check.
LD, Dragon, loud and clear.
LD loud and clear. Stand by for comm check on Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD, Dragon to ground, comm check.
LD, Dragon, loud and clear.
LD loud and clear.
Dragon SpaceX, launch configuration comm checks are complete.
Dragon copies, and crew are ready for side hatch closure.
Copy, crew readiness for side hatch closure. Closeout team is taking final steps in prep for that closure, so stand by for that in a few minutes. The vehicle will then transition to pad hatch closed. Ensure all items are secure from now through launch.
Dragon copies, Wilco.
Those communication checks, Nick, were really important for each of the crew members to be able to speak to some very important members of the launch team.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so you've got the comm checks you've been hearing with Core, which is really the voice from the SpaceX control room to Dragon. But you've also got the launch director, the mission director in there as well. And then it gets more complex because you're checking multiple different ways that you're going to be able to get the communications there, whether going direct from ground to Dragon or whether using the TDRS relay satellites. So communications critical, being able to verbally talk, but then the other connection that you can't forget about is the telemetry and the vehicle communication down to the ground. Dragon is a highly autonomous vehicle and has a pretty close couple with mission control on the ground to be able to monitor all of that automation.
You're watching launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. Nick Hague, our astronaut co-host today, walking you through the operations. Just told a very powerful and moving story about his first launch, which ended with a flight abort, but brought him and his crew members safely to the ground, back to his family. He launched again on MS-12. But that story brought forth a question on social that we want to take now. We're taking your questions live and bringing them to Nick, who's answering them as we go. So Oscar asks, Nick, you're one of the very few people in history who have ever aborted in flight. How did it feel as it happened?
Yeah. We spend so much time training for what to do when things go wrong. I'd venture that we spend about 95% of our training focused on what to do in the event that something goes wrong. And so the situation of the abort is one that Alexei and I performed in the simulator about 8 months before we launched and experienced it. And so there's the one time in the sim. It's a very short simulation. The actual flight was less than 20 minutes. The simulation's less than 20 minutes. But we had run those procedures. And the sum total of all of that training is that you get very disciplined at running procedures because you know that those procedures are the things that are going to keep you safe when things don't go right. So in the moment, there is the oh boy moment when it's happening. The alarm's going off, the lights flashing, everything's kind of shaking, and it takes you a second or two to fully process exactly what's happening. And then there's I had the realization that if this was going to be a really bad day, it would have happened. So I've got a chance. So the best way to protect Alexei and I is for both of us to do our procedures and focus on those. And so you compartmentalize all of those emotions. You kind of set those to the side and you focus on doing your job. And so we run through the procedures, and we talk with mission control in Moscow, and surprisingly, you know, I spent so much time in Star City training, that Russian that I was talking about being painful to learn, that is just naturally coming out because all of our communications are in Russian. And then it's not until you touch the ground, the search and rescue forces come and extract you. You know, they were there within like 10 minutes. They come and extract us and pull us out under the parachutes. It's at that moment when your body can relax. You can stop focusing on all the things you need to do to be safe because you know you're safe, and then that's when shock kind of rolls over you. And your body just tries to process everything that happened. We're human. You can't bottle that stuff up forever. And so it was you could hear the waver in my voice when I called Katie and on the satellite phone and said, "Hey, I'm okay." I actually had to leave a voicemail because she had her phone off.
Oh no.
But we have that voicemail, and you know, I've been able to listen to it, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow. Thank you, Oscar, so much for that question. And thank you, Nick, for that beautiful answer. We are continuing to document Crew 11's steps through their mission operational timelines, getting ready for launch. You saw this closeout crew remove a protective cover around the seal. Now they are examining that seal and documenting, taking pictures of it, because once they shut that door, it needs to be as airtight as they can possibly get it, since you're going into the vacuum of space, and it needs to protect all 4 crew members inside.
Yeah, it doesn't. A single strand of hair across the seal can be enough to cause it to fail the leak check. So it's got to be completely pristine. It's got to be pristine.
And we've had that happen in previous missions where exactly just that. A hair ended up on the seal, and once they did the pressure check, they saw it, opened it back up, found it, removed it, and then resealed it, and they were good to go for launch. And so there's a bit of margin in this countdown, and we're in that kind of flexible time right now where they have time to work through methodically on this procedure. Nick, we don't want to end the story with the end of MS-10. We want to go to MS-12, which was the next space flight, your next launch. And here you are now with a crew of 3. You said, "I'm going back."
Yeah. That's the job. I mean, we explore because it's important, and so that doesn't change launch to launch to launch. The mindset to get back on top of the rocket isn't any different the first time than it is the second time, than it is the third time. It's, why am I willing to accept this risk? Why is my family willing to accept this risk? And it's because what we're doing up there is so important. The scientific discovery, the learning about the human body and how we interact with the environment around us, and more about the universe around us, that's just so important. And so that's why you do it. And so this time, night launch. So I got a day launch and a night launch, a twofer. And
lucky you.
It was beautiful. And you saw Christina had joined. She was going up for a year-long mission. And Alexa and I gave it another shot, and it was flawless all the way to docking. A spectacular flight.
And this was in 2019.
2019.
Just a little less than a year after MS-10 in October of 2018.
Yeah, 5 months. So we had the launch. You know, so we had our launch abort, and then 2 months later. 2 months later, MS-11 launched, and they had fixed the problem. They diagnosed what the problem was with the rocket, and then 5 months later, we were on board. It takes a lot to keep the station going. We've been doing it for 25 years, and so that drumbeat of rotations of crews has to keep going.
Absolutely, and you fulfilled your role in that photo we just saw. was the completion of a successful mission to the International Space Station. When you returned from space and were being brought out of that capsule,
yeah, it was, I mean, it's ironic because where our abort landed was in the normal landing zone. We landed there almost a year to the day later in that landing zone. And so it was the culmination of a pretty interesting year, needless to say.
How about that? As you look around, right, and go, I remember this place. But you felt a lot different.
Yes, absolutely. It's spaceflight changes your perspective. You know, that overview effect that everybody talks about, the way you perceive the globe and how connected we are and just how special the Earth is. It's profound. I wish we could get more people up there.
I hear this time and again from other astronauts that
the more, you know, we're almost up to 700 people now that have gone into space. I'd love that to be, you know, 700,000 people, even if it's for short periods of time. You know, as a veteran that's done a suborbital flight as well as an orbital flight, it's all good.
Sure, many of our audience, I know I would love to go someday, and that's of course the aim of the Commercial Crew program, is to make space more accessible to more people. And so finally, your most recent mission, 2024, in September of that year, not too long ago, you launched back into space on Crew 9. This, of course, launched from right here on the Space Coast, Launch Complex 40, as you mentioned, the first crewed mission from that pad. But there was only 2 of you. And we've talked about this. This was a crew of 2 for a special reason. You had an important mission for Crew 9.
Yeah, you know, the seat 1 and 4 there, you can see are empty on the uphill portion, and you know, and that was to accommodate Butch and Sonny coming back home with Alex and I 6 months later. So we were launching on a normal rotational mission to the station, and planning to do our 6-month long duration mission. And job 1, as soon as we opened that hatch, was integrating Butch and Sonny into the Crew 9 crew, and then continuing to do that research mission.
There you are, lifting off.
I got to say that, you know, the weather today is so much better than it was back then. We had a hurricane blow through a day or so before, and then there was a window and a little hole in the weather, and we shot through it. I think they've got a better weather today.
There you are with your full crew of 4 on the way back home.
Yeah, you can see Butch in the far field there. Sonny's just off the camera, close to us, and yeah, coming home.
A very successful mission, Crew 9, bringing back home Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. I imagine, did you have to kind of, you know, wrangle Sonny out of that space station? She loves being in space.
You know, I think it's universal. I mean, you want to get home to see your family after being gone for that long. You want to get back to some of the things you miss about being on Earth, but you're also sad to close the hatch and to leave that environment up there that's just so special. You know, you never know when you're going to get back, if you're ever going to get back, because, you know, everybody's future is, you just don't know. And it is just so, it just has such a huge effect on everything that you do, you know, and you bring that back. And so missing out on being able to float around or look out the window, or, you know, in some respects, it's see all of my, you know, my crewmates. So I haven't seen Alex since right after landing. I haven't seen Alexei and Oleg since the station. And so you feel this sense of time passing and the moment ending.
We are T-minus 2 hours and 10 minutes until liftoff of Crew 11, NASA and SpaceX's rotational mission to the International Space Station. In a little less than an hour, we are going to expand coverage with our friends from SpaceX joining our launch broadcast, and we'll come up on camera so you can see us, see Nick live in the flesh here as he steps us through the operations today all the way to liftoff and into orbit. A note about the weather. The launch team and the launch weather officer are discussing conditions both here and along the ascent corridor. Winds are forecast to be picking up around 14 knots and then peaking to 18 knots at launch time. So that is something that they're going to evaluate closely. The winds have to be within a certain range before they'll go forward with prop load, which of course is a very careful and delicate operation. It's automated for SpaceX, but when you start loading a rocket with propellant, a lot of care has to be given to external influences like the weather.
Dragon SpaceX, we're commencing health check for launch escape system. You can expect a momentary flight computer state change, followed by transition back to pad hatch closed.
Dragon copies.
And so you mentioned the weather, and it gets right to the point that they're making here is the weather's got to be good so that we know that the launch escape system can be used, so we can arm that before we start loading that propellant. So at the moment where we start loading all this dangerous stuff onto the rocket, we make sure that the crew has got a way to get out of there in a heartbeat if they need to. And onshore winds may seem like, you know, not a big deal, but if you're coming down under a parachute on a capsule that's not supposed to land on land, you want to make sure that you don't drift onto the land. And so that's why they watch all of those conditions.
Critically important, those winds. And so the teams will be evaluating this again just before prop load. Of course, this is a forecast that we see right now, but what actually happens to the winds in the moment that we're getting ready to launch, or getting ready to arm the escape system rather, and then load props could be different. So that's why we watch it in real time. Winds are notably fickle here at the spaceport because of what Nick just said. That sea breeze, it gets kicking up. You can see our flag out by the launch clock right now, starting to blow just a little bit. And so we'll be monitoring that throughout the rest of the countdown going into T-minus 50 minutes.
Yeah, that's a beautiful sight, though, isn't it?
It is indeed. And what has shaped up to be a beautiful day for launch so far. If you're just joining us, we'd like to introduce you to the crew. Crew 11 going into space today consists of the commander, NASA astronaut Zena Cardman. She holds a Master of Science in Marine Sciences from UNC Chapel Hill. Cardman has experience with NASA research in the Canadian High Arctic and has supported real-time station operations and lunar surface exploration planning. She also likes rock climbing and powerlifting in her free time. She trained for Crew 11 as the commander, but was reassigned to Crew 11. And is now the commander here, and she has, by virtue of all that training, a lot of training for a first-time flyer.
She is well prepared. You know, she's been well prepared from day one. She had done a backup flow prior to the Crew 9 assignment. But it was a thrill to be able to go through spend the roughly 18 months leading up to the Crew 9 launch, being able to train side by side with her. She's a phenomenal crewmate and is going to do an amazing job.
Your Crew 11 pilot is NASA astronaut Michael Fincke, a veteran of 3 space flights. Fincke has completed 9 spacewalks, totaling 48 hours and 37 minutes of EVA time, and has spent 382 days in space. Fincke is a certified pilot for Boeing Starliner and SpaceX Crew Dragon, as well as a co-pilot, flight engineer on Soyuz, and a mission specialist on the space shuttle. Fincke enjoys spending time with his family, traveling, geology, and learning new languages. Unlike you, Nick. Michael Fincke loves to learn himself a new language.
We are completely different in that regard. No, actually, learning a new language opens up your appreciation for their culture and gives you a deeper understanding. And so even though it was one of the most difficult aspects of training, it's also been one of the most rewarding.
I wanted so badly to learn a second language. I studied French. It did not stick, but I certainly appreciate those who can speak another language. But thank goodness for smartphones and apps that now translate for you. So I feel like I'm missing out on less.
Yeah.
Our mission specialists, let's get to them. JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui is Crew 11 mission specialist number 1 with 142 days in space. This will be Yui's second trip to the space station. Yui flew as a flight engineer for Expedition 4445 and became the first Japanese astronaut to capture JAXA's H-2 transfer vehicle in November 2016. Yui was assigned as chief of the JAXA astronaut group.
Yeah, and he had to learn English and Russian in order to fly to the station. So I guess this is the note that you need to give to all the kids that are listening. I want to grow up and be an astronaut. Probably the one thing you absolutely need to do is know 2 languages or more.
Well, that takes me out.
I said kids, Daryl.
Oh, okay. So you're saying there's still a chance? Mission specialist number 2 is Oleg Platonov. The Crew 11 mission specialist is Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov. This will be his first trip to the International Space Station. He graduated from the Krasnodar Higher Military Aviation School of Pilots with a degree in engineering and military rank of lieutenant. He is married with 1 child and apparently is the comedian of the group.
I think they all have a pretty good sense of humor.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. And you see that expressed, even as they were just making their way out to the pad and up into the capsule. Lots of smiles, lots of laughter.
We did see that as they were coming across the crew access arm earlier as they made their way into the spacecraft. T-minus 2 hours and 3 minutes and counting until liftoff of Crew 11.
It's a long wait. Now they're strapped in and there's not much to do. And so you have time to reflect and think about all those, I guarantee you they're thinking about the things they need to do, but they're also thinking about all the people that helped them get into that seat. The training teams, the ops teams, everybody that supported them along the way. Their families, their friends, the ones that have been the support network to get them to this day.
As Crew 11 reflects, we want to reflect on their destination, the International Space Station, one of the most extraordinary labs ever built. Here's a closer look now at how science happening up there in their destination in low Earth orbit is improving life for all of us down here on Earth.
The International Space Station isn't just a symbol. It's a powerhouse of cutting-edge science, constantly revealing secrets that defy Earth's limitations and drive us farther into the cosmos.
Our mission is research and science. We have experiments mounted on the outside of the station that are looking at Earth. We study our own bodies and how they react to space, to weightlessness, to radiation, and that helps not only us go on further in future missions, but also helps for medical research back home. And then we study lots of different things as well, like materials, combustion, all sorts of things that help us understand life back on Earth.
Yeah! Microgravity doesn't play by the rules. It flips them upside down, transforming how liquids flow, how flames burn, and unraveling biological mysteries before our eyes.
I saw some heart tissues beating in space, and it was incredible.
Photon, we see that top one beating. Looks like happy heart cells.
But we're not just along for the ride. We're explorers, diving headfirst into the challenge and harnessing the power of this unparalleled platform, just as we have been for decades. We're on a relentless quest for answers, seeking to understand the intricate workings of the human body in space and ensuring future crews stay safe on their daring journeys beyond Earth's orbit.
The human aspect of human space exploration is always going to be very important for decades to come.
And when it comes to technology, we're not waiting around. We're discovering new ways to grow crops in harsh environments and engineering innovations to tackle Earth's greatest challenges.
We have amazing technology that allows us to recycle water and create water for us to drink. It's delicious.
Microgravity isn't just a curiosity, it's a game changer in the fight against diseases back on Earth, paving the way for breakthroughs that benefit us all and enabling new economic opportunities in space.
Welcome Axiom 3 on board the International Space Station.
From our vantage point more than 200 miles above Earth, we are not just spectators. We're gaining unprecedented insights into the world we call home, and we're sharing our findings openly. We're not just achieving results today, we're sparking inspiration in future generations of explorers and embracing the power of global collaboration as we reach for the stars.
What was your favorite experiment on the International Space Station?
Toby, great question. My favorite experiment was the one that I got to eat. It was us growing hatch chili peppers in our plant habitat.
Station Huntsville on 2, we have video in Node 1. Look at those chili peppers.
And as we soar through space at 17,500 miles per hour, each moment is a step closer to unlocking the mysteries of our Earth, our universe, and propelling our pioneering spirit even farther into space. So come along for the ride aboard the International Space Station.
Nick, you spent more than a year cumulatively of time on that International Space Station. When you think back to the things that you work on, what comes to your mind as some of your favorite stuff?
Yeah, there's such a variety up there. Growing stem cells, doing gene editing, working with materials, trying to extrude fiber optics or 3D printing metal or organic tissue, trying to print organs, growing lots of different types of food, whether it's tomatoes or algae or lettuce. It's so fun to be in the middle of all of that, and it's hard to pick a favorite out of all of that, but it's fascinating. And what's been fun is looking from 2019, when I did my first expedition, to the most recent expedition, being able to see the growth in complexity of the science that we're able to do up there. When you first start doing things, you're like, I don't even know if it's going to work. And once we start to figure out and adjust, now we're able to start to really reap the rewards of all of that effort.
That's a great point, because when I look at the science that's going aboard this mission, this is pretty advanced stuff. You talked about, stem cells in the early going when you were working with them on station. Now they're trying to figure out how to mass produce stem cells, which can be made at a higher quality and higher yield in microgravity, the environment that the International Space Station provides for scientists that you can't replicate on the ground.
Yeah, we go there to ask questions that we don't know the answer to. And then when we find that answer, it usually leads to a couple more questions. But that's the nature of discovery. That's the nature of building knowledge. And as we gain this knowledge, we start to identify these areas where, hey, this is something that is unique to space that'll bring benefit back down to Earth for everybody. And then we can really start to exploit that.
That is exciting, because in the end, that's what it's for, right? It is not only to advance exploration goals, but also to make life better here on Earth. And the International Space Station in its 25 years has certainly done that. An update as you watch our operations here. We have a little bit of a lull as the closeout crew in the White Room on top of the launch tower seals up the hatch to the Endeavour spacecraft. That side hatch is how the crew of 4 made their way into the capsule, and now it is the responsibility of the team that you see here to make sure that that door has a good seal, a good tight seal, before it starts to fly hundreds of miles per hour, thousands of miles per hour, and then tens of thousands of miles per hour. So this is a very important job.
Yeah, you're through that hundreds pretty fast.
What's the ride like on the Dragon specifically at liftoff?
It's smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so smooth.
Liquid propellant?
Yeah, you know, so you don't, like, I never got a chance to fly on the shuttle, but the shuttle was rough because of the solid rocket boosters.
That's what everybody said.
You don't have that, and the thrust level is a little slower here, so it also doesn't, like, throw you off the pad. It's a slow acceleration, but it's a constant increase in that acceleration that just keeps going until you get to, you know, kind of the end of first stage. It's just super smooth. And then when the first stage is done, it separates, and then there's 5 seconds or so before you light the second stage engine, upper stage, and so you're weightless. And that was completely different than Soyuz, because Soyuz hot stages, and so you never have that period of weightlessness. And so you spend 5 seconds and you're like, okay, we're weightless. I'm ready for it to light. I want to make sure we get there. And then it continues on. And so it's a smooth ride all the way up.
The second stage is a kicker, though, isn't it?
It all starts slow. So the G
ramps
starts
up?
and then it slowly ramps up. So there's not too many jarring moments flying on a Dragon.
We were talking earlier about the science. Let's dive into what Crew 11 will be doing. They will be busy at T-minus 1 hour and 53 minutes until they lift off to get there. We have 2 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut inside Crew 11 right now. Inside of Dragon Endeavour, I should say, on top of a Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This crew, of course, as you see them right here, headed to the International Space Station to help maintain this very special orbiting lab. Once on board the International Space Station, Crew 11 will become members of Expedition 73-74. They will conduct research to develop the production of nutrients in space, such as vitamins. They will also evaluate mass-producing human-induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs, to develop cell-based therapies for diseases such as cancer, as well as a possible alternative to antibiotics. Crew 11 will test using phage therapy to treat bacterial infections. And these things are important, and you were telling me this yesterday when we were going over the show and prepping for the show, and I asked you, is an infection or a cut worse in space than it is on ground? And you said yes.
Yeah, you know, our immune systems are suppressed. They don't operate as efficiently in space as they do on the ground. You know, and one of the experiments that I was a subject for up there, and it's an ongoing experiment, is looking at the immune system and just trying to figure out why does it get suppressed like that. But yeah, if you cut yourself and it gets infected up there, it takes longer to heal. So don't cut yourself when you're in space.
I just wrote that down as my notes for when I
it's
fly
a tip.
one day.
Yes. Pro tip.
Pro tip. Yeah, and if you do, and you were explaining yesterday, if you do cut yourself, that it's not like, you know, the blood goes out into space. It holds to your finger because of surface tension. Right?
Yeah, it does. Water does amazing things up there.
Just weird stuff.
If you get water, you know, it floats, and we see all these videos where it's floating as a bubble inside, you know, in front of them. But if you put your finger into that, it just kind of adheres to the surface of your hand and kind of crawls all up your arm, and then it'll stop, and then it becomes body temperature, and then you can't even tell there's water on your hand because there's no motion associated with it because it's just stuck in that one spot. It doesn't exert any weight on your skin. It's the same temperature, so you just don't even know it. And so you'll have water globs on you and just not notice until something gets wet.
Or somebody smells you if it's sweat.
That's true. That's true. It's polite to just hand them a towel.
Team. All right, we're coming up on T-minus 1 hour and 50 minutes. So far, a smooth countdown. We saw Crew 11 at T-minus 4 hours get suited up. They left the astronaut crew quarters about 20 minutes away from here, got into their Teslas, rode out to the pad after saying goodbye to their family members. Under security escort, drove by the vehicle assembly building on the way, which is housing currently a moon rocket scheduled for launch of that crew, a test flight around the moon in early next year. And then they made it to this launch pad 39A, where in a little under 2 hours they will lift off bound for the International Space Station with an instantaneous window of 12:09 and 24 seconds p.m. Eastern Time. We're keeping an eye on the weather. Locally, showing a lot of promise as it's a sunny day, a very hot July day here in Florida, as they typically are this time of year. But the winds have kicked up just a bit. You can see that in the texture on the Atlantic Ocean there. And the launch weather officer is monitoring winds, expected to increase right around the T0. So, as Nick pointed out earlier, that's an important criteria, launch criteria that they have to monitor so that the launch escape system can operate properly. That would take them out over the Atlantic Ocean. Winds need to be in the right direction and the right strength in order for that system to operate correctly. We're also looking at launch weather here, or rather around the world, along the ascent corridor, where there are areas where, just in case, just like you, when you aborted, there was an area for you to go on land because Soyuz lands on land. With Dragon, you have abort locations along the eastern seaboard and then beyond?
Yeah, effectively it's all the way up the East Coast, and then kind of your last opportunity that you would need, because you'll be in orbit at that point any further on, is just off the coast of Ireland. And so we watch the weather, we watch the sea states. We make sure that, if we needed to go and pick up a crew because they had to abort and they landed in one of those zones, that the search and rescue forces will be able to get into those locations, that the weather is going to be support that kind of operation. And so weather's a little more complex when it comes to spaceflight. You've got to take a global perspective and prepare for all those different contingencies.
We've got the split screen there with Crew 11 on the inside. That camera with a prominent shot of pilot Mike Fincke's knees, dead center. But the rest of the crew is also there to Mike Fincke's, to screen left is mission specialist Oleg Platonov. To Fincke's left, to our right, moving right to the two positions, would be our commander, Zena Cardman. And to the far, far right, next to the window, is Kimiya Yui.
There's a lot of rights and lefts there, Daryl.
Yeah.
We need some on-screen graphics to make it.
Yes, I think you're right about that. And so after you're done here today, we will be drafting you into our production team.
Oh, okay, great.
Nick. We could use the help. No, we've got a great team that does a great job, but I do appreciate that.
You can make out below the crew cargo.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, so there's cargo supplies for them, but there's also science that they bring up as well as survival equipment. So there's 3 pallets that are below those 4 seats that are chock full of gear.
And the red one is like, that's like first aid kit, possibly?
Your red one is the life raft.
Life raft, okay.
Yeah. So we showed a clip of that in the NBL at the very beginning, where you throw that out and there's a bottle. As you throw it, the rope will extract and then eventually pulls on a bottle that inflates it, and that's what they were crawling inside of in the NBL for training.
It also looked like they had water wings.
Personal flotation devices, yes.
They look like water wings to me, Nick.
Yes, yes. You know, we trained for that kind of thing, so it's a standard you have to meet to be able to, all of you, go from this configuration they're in right now to put on the personal flotation device and get out of the capsule in 90 seconds.
Well, their destination when they launch at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time is the International Space Station, or ISS. This will be commemorating a significant anniversary on November 2nd. When we get to that date, we will have had 25 years of continuous human presence aboard this orbiting laboratory.
And liftoff. International Space Station is underway.
We are in the golden age of the space station right now in terms of the return on investment and what we're able to do there.
One of the great legacies of the space station is not just going to be science, but very importantly, the international cooperation. This is perhaps most prominent, international cooperation for exploration.
Years, you know, every roughly 6 months or so, a crew doing a rotational mission with a handover, and it's been a thrill to be a part of those rotational missions. To be able to just watch the evolution of science and see how we're learning how to really utilize the laboratory to its full potential. I don't know where those clouds came from. They need to blow away. So the crew's sitting in there, T-minus 1 hour and 42 minutes. This is the moment where crew is sitting in there and you don't have a lot to do except reflect. You know, the next big events are when you arm the launch escape system at about 45 minutes, T-minus 45. Prop load will start about T-minus 35. That's when there's activity and you start to bring in focus. Now it's a time-honored tradition in spaceflight to have to endure long moments of waiting for big things to happen. That's a better view. I don't see the clouds. And right now, I'd like to hand it over to Mission Control. The team at Johnson Space Center is tying in with us. How are you guys doing?
Hey Nick, hey Daryl, we're doing good over here. This is Mission Control Houston in the International Space Station's Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center. The team continues to prepare for launch and is being led today by Flight Director Scott Stover. Today we will be launching the 11th rotational crew mission to the International Space Station under the agency's Commercial Crew Program. Following Crew 11's arrival, the space station will have a total of 11 crew members represented by 3 different agencies aboard for just a few days. Once on board, Crew 11 will go over a brief handover period and procedures with the off-going Crew 10, including a safety briefing and orientation, and then the new crew will jump right in to help advance scientific knowledge and demonstrate new technologies. After a few days of handover activities, the members of Crew 10 will prepare for their undocking and return to Earth. Direct handovers between crews allow for continuity of the activities and helps to ensure a continuous U.S. presence on the space station, which is about to celebrate 25 years of continuous presence in November. Ahead of Crew 10's return, JAXA astronaut Takuya Onishi will turn over command of the space station to Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Ryzhikov. The space station is currently in Expedition 73, and in the fall, NASA astronaut Chris Williams and Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Kudzverchkin and Sergei Mikhailov will join the on-orbit crew. Shortly after the departure of the Soyuz MS-27 with NASA astronaut Johnny Kim coming home will mark the commencement of Expedition 74, which will be led by the new commander, Mike Fincke. All of this, of course, coming up after today's launch. We continue with the countdown, and with under 2 hours before launch, we'll send it back over to the Kennedy Space Center. Daryl and Nick?
Thank you very much, Sandra. Back here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, T-minus 1 hour and 38 minutes and counting until liftoff of Crew 11 aboard a Falcon 9 rocket. The spacecraft Endeavour, the flight leader currently in the fleet of Dragon spacecraft. It is a lovely day here in Florida. You're looking up in the skies now, and as typical for this time of year, starting to get a little cumulus clouds forming as the cool sea breeze makes its way over land, encountering the warm air here in Florida. Hot and humid air. So we are expecting to get a few cumulus clouds. That was a minor concern for weather. We are still 90% go, but that 10% was for cumulus clouds, and we're starting to see them forming in our shots around the pad. But we're not expecting that to be clumped over top of the pad at T0, so we're still 90% go. One of the first things Crew 11 did, they came together as a team, and they designed this patch that you see here. This is a tradition for all spaceflight missions, human spaceflight missions, and science missions. You design a mission patch. And this is the one for Crew 11. The colors of this patch, celebrating the 3 nations they represent. And the 3 stars that you see there, the ones with a starburst, they honor their space agencies working together, the 3 of them, NASA, Roscosmos, and JAXA. The 2 sunbeams that you see coming from the upper right, shining down, well, they make the number 11, shining on a tiny blue dot, our home on Earth. The Dragon looks on, of course, a nod to both the spacecraft and the spirit of exploration, while a red flame wraps around it all, symbolizing the full journey, launch, life in space, and a safe return home. And if you look closely, you can see a tribute to their children in the stars. This is a reminder that the missions like this As we know, when we got the question from 8-year-old Knox earlier, they help to inspire the next generation. Appreciate all those young folks who get the bug for space knowledge and to learn about space and exploration, which requires a good foundation in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
Yeah, it all starts with education. I think children grow up inherently curious. I mean, we've been there and we've asked why, and we've all been in the position where we've had, someone sit there and just continue to ask why. That's really what we're doing on the station with all of our research, all of our exploration. We're asking the question why in a bunch of different ways and trying to find the answers. That we're just wired that way.
Mm. It is so true. And speaking of kids are on the mind of some of our crew members. Talking about Oleg Platonov. He has a child whose toy he is bringing aboard the International Space Station, taking one of his kids' toys so that it will be a spaceflight flown toy when it comes back down to Earth, along, of course, with pictures and some other artifacts. But each one of the crew members gets to take something up, and that's what Oleg's taking.
Yeah. So I hope it's not his kid's favorite toy.
Yeah,
because he's going to be without it for a while. No, but
that might cause more of a problem on Earth.
But it's something absolutely that Oleg's child's going to just cherish the rest of his life, and having the opportunity to bring up little things to be able to give as mementos to friends and family is huge.
Oleg's fellow mission specialist, Kimiya Yui, well, he's bringing a lot of pictures of family, friends, and colleagues. And one of the pictures he's going to take up, he's going to then give back to the people who gave him the photos. So that's a touching thing. We talked earlier in the show about what Mike Fincke is bringing up. He's bringing up a Gamasa from the state of Assam. He, of course, said in a press conference recently, he's been married 25 and a half years. To a wife, his wife of Indian origin, and the Gamasa is a silk scarf that carries with it the blessings for his trip to the ISS from her side of the family, and he's taken one not only on this mission, but he's taken that Gamasa on all 3 of his previous missions as well.
Yeah, good luck charm. I'd stick with it. It's working well for him.
That's right. Whatever you took on your first flight, I hope you put somewhere, buried somewhere. No, just kidding.
So I use the same 0G indicator on all 3 flights.
Did you?
Yeah.
You're not. You're like, no, I'm not buying any of this luck stuff. You're like, I'm gonna stick with what works.
I trust the people behind it.
That's a great answer. And then, of course, finally, Zena, our commander, she's of course taking, like the rest, photographs of family and friends. But because of her previous assignment to Crew 9, the mission that you ended up commanding, her stuff went up early. And one of the things that she mentioned that she is taking up and shared with the public was that she has some cards that were written by her late father that she included in Crew 9, but now we're coming up on anniversaries and a certain amount of time that he has not been with her, and she gets to now see those cards again when she arrives at the International Space Station.
Yeah, it's truly touching, and it was one of those things. Once Alex and I got to the station, being able to make sure that we got that stuff set aside and ready for her, knowing that she was going to come in trail, and no, it's going to be a special moment for her.
That's right. You actually had her stuff put into place.
Yeah, packaged it all up. Yep. She may even have a birthday gift up there waiting for her. Who knows?
Well. Teaser. What is it?
Nice try.
Well, it'll be up to her on whether she shares it or not, but we'll stay tuned. We will stay tuned.
Yeah, but you know, those things show you that it is a very human endeavor. We're not just launching satellites into space. There's this exploration aspect, but there's this layer of humanity over the top of it that's so important, and all of these little gestures just bring that to light.
We are currently 1 hour and 30 minutes until liftoff of Dragon, flying Crew 11 to the International Space Station. There you see Endeavour, the capsule at the very top. 6th flight today for that capsule. The number of historic flights that it has under its belt, beginning with Demo 2, and then going on to Crew 2, Axiom 1, Crew 6, Crew 8. Long history with CCP, the Commercial Crew Program, which has a fond place in the hearts of the folks who work for CCP for this spacecraft. Spent a lot of time reviewing data and examining it, getting it ready for each flight that it flew for NASA.
It's a workhorse.
It is, and as you know, spaceflight is hard on equipment. So those checks and examination of the data and looking over the critical systems is an important part of making sure that that capsule can continue on. It's currently at its 6th flight, but these spacecraft were only certified for 5. CCP did a recertification, moving it up to 6 flights. Ultimately, SpaceX would like to fly these capsules 15 times. And they say that they have systems that are ready for 15 times reuse. Commercial Crew Program is currently reviewing and looking over the data to determine how much more of the systems need to be reviewed in order to certify it for those additional flights. But that's exactly it. That's the goal here, is to make these spacecraft and rockets reusable, bringing down substantially the cost of spaceflight.
Yeah, and hopefully opening space up to so many more.
As we wait for the upcoming joiner, less than 20 minutes away from joining our friends with SpaceX, as they will continue on with us in our launch coverage. We'll have everybody up on camera. We'll turn our cameras on. They'll turn theirs on, and we'll get to see everybody from our locations around the United States, both here in Florida and Texas and California. Let's talk a little bit more about the science, in particular what Crew 11 is going to be working on. One of the questions they're facing is, how do you grow vitamins in space, or even use viruses to help fight bacteria on a spacecraft? Well, for the past year and a half, Crew 11 has been training to support cutting-edge research like this aboard the International Space Station. First up, Bionutrients 3. The study is looking at how to make essential vitamins and nutrients in space so astronauts can stay healthy on long missions. They'll be testing samples like yogurt, kefir, and a yeast-based drink to see how well they work in microgravity. Next up is Stem Cell X IP1, which uses space to grow stem cells. These stem cells can turn into any type of cell in the body and could one day help treat diseases like cancer. Growing them in microgravity may produce more volumes of cells, mass producing them, and better ones than we can make on Earth. And then there's Genes in Space 12. It's testing phage therapy, which uses viruses that could target and kill bacteria. It could be a powerful alternative to antibiotics, especially in space, where infections can become harder to treat. Some really fascinating research happening on board station. In addition to the human research side of things, you were talking about this earlier, each one of these astronauts will be studied, many of their biological functions, and their, of course, biological data will be studied as their time comes to a close in space, and studied afterwards, studied during, studied afterwards, and possibly it being an 8-month mission.
Yeah, you have the opportunity as crew members to volunteer to be a human test subject for for a lot of different experiments that are focused on how does microgravity and the space environment, the high radiation environment, how does that affect human physiology? And it runs the gamut from just muscle and bone health all the way down to genetic structure and how that changes, or how our immune systems might be suppressed. And we've been doing this for 25 years and we're still learning.
Space is hard on the human body, is it not?
It is, but the body is so amazing in how it adapts. It is constantly responding to the environment around us, and we don't really see that on Earth because the changes in the environment around us aren't dramatic enough. But when you pull us out of Earth and put us into space, that dramatic change, you get to watch your body respond to all of that, whether it's spinal growth and straightening that causes you to grow a little bit taller, whether it's the fluid shift and the pressure distribution within your vascular system is more balanced, and you feel that in your head. It goes even to the way you perceive the environment around you and your mental predictions of how things behave. You start to predict and think in weightlessness. All of that adapts, and you've got a front row seat for it, so it's pretty amazing.
Literally experiencing the changes happening within your own body. Jessica Muir says she came back and she could actually see better than she did before because of that, the pressure of microgravity exerting differently on her eyeball than it does under being back on the Earth with regular gravity.
Yeah, and we're still trying to understand the root source of why those changes in vision happen, why the changes in our eyes occur. I wish I had her problem, because now I'm wearing glasses
as a result of that.
So
it can go both ways.
It can cut both ways.
Okay. And who knows, Nick, you might have been bound for glasses anyway, no?
Well, I mean, everybody is at some point.
Right.
You just called me old? Is that what happened?
It was very subtle. You did catch it, though.
Yeah, I did.
T-minus 1 hour and 23 minutes. I'm Daryl Nail with NASA Communications, and I'm joined by Nick Hague, NASA astronaut and Brigadier General with the Space Force. We have social questions. Keep them coming. We've had some great ones so far. Just use the hashtag AskNASA and send us those questions on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Twitch. We've got a person who's monitoring our social feeds right now, looking for great questions. And here's one from Joshua R. Collins. Does the whole crew have the same doctor, or does each crew member have their own? Is it their regular personal doctor or a NASA medical team doctor?
So each space agency provides a medical team to support their astronauts or cosmonauts. So you'll, for Crew 11 in particular, you're going to have a NASA flight doc team of a surgeon, flight surgeon, primary and deputy, that will support Zena and Mike. And then you're going to have separate medical teams supporting Kimiya and then a Roscosmos team supporting Oleg. Those, in the NASA, if I look at how NASA supports us with medical, the personal doctor is your flight doctor. And so the person that sees you day to day for the years leading up to your mission is the same person that is supporting you throughout your mission, and then after your mission when you're rehabilitating, and then beyond. And so that flight medicine team is one of those key relationships that you develop once you join the astronaut corps.
A flight surgeon for each space agency, and they go with them until they get to the pad, and then they break off. They're there, standing not too far away, just in case they are needed for any reason. But those, exactly as you said, those flight surgeons standing by. Give you a couple upcoming milestones. T-minus 47 minutes. We're going to get an LD brief. That's from the launch director at SpaceX, and we're monitoring weather conditions along the abort corridor. Also keeping an eye on the winds here locally. They picked up a little more than were initially forecast. At T-minus 1 hour, just about 20 minutes from now, the closeout team will depart the pad. That was the team that was getting the crew all ready inside the spacecraft and then sealed up the hatch. They will depart. It'll just be the crew out there on the pad. It'll be them and Dragon Endeavour that you see right there at the top. We've talked a lot about this capsule today. It's taking its 6th space flight. Since its first flight in 2020 for Demo 2, SpaceX's Endeavour Dragon has been a workhorse for NASA's Commercial Crew Program, flying mission after mission. It has safely carried astronauts to the International Space Station 5 times. Demo 2, Crew 2 in 2021, Axiom Mission 1 in 2022, Crew 6 in 2023, and Crew 8 in 2024. In all, Endeavour has flown 9 NASA astronauts, 3 space tourists, 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts, 1 retired NASA astronaut, 1 ESA astronaut, and an Arab astronaut from the UAE to and from the International Space Station. Crew 11 marks Endeavour's 6th mission, the flight leader to the ISS. And we leave you now with dancing from Crew 1. Apparently choreographed as well. Look at that.
Yeah, they had their act together.
What choreographed dance moves did you do, Nick?
Don't dance. That's one thing that
Don't
didn't.
dance.
That's one thing that didn't translate into space. Yeah, I don't dance on Earth, and I didn't dance in space. But you can do somersaults and flips and twists, though.
Yes, especially as you're zipping around that space station. I mean, it's
fun.
Yeah, oh man,
It's like,
it looks like it.
Every dream you had as a 5-year-old of flying around, and you get to do that every day.
I used to dream that as a kid so often that I could just flap my arms and fly.
Yeah.
It was a recurring dream that I had, and sometimes I woke up really actually believing that I could fly. I can imagine when you're on the ISS, you wake up and it's like you get to just do it again day after day.
Yeah.
It's real. That dream is real.
It's your new normal.
Yeah.
And you just have fun with it. You float over and grab your drink bag to rehydrate your morning coffee, and you can do a backflip between that and the water dispenser, and you just play with it. You know, you don't need to use utensils to eat. You can just put the food out in the air in front of you and pretend like you're in an aquarium. So those flags were hanging dead for a while, but they're blowing again.
Yeah, that's the breeze that the forecasters looked at the charts and the data that they have around all the instruments that we have around the Kennedy Space Center. And early this morning forecast an earlier kick up to those winds, and so we're seeing them now. They've got a forecast for 14 knots around liftoff time with a peak of 18 knots. Of course, they're going to reevaluate that here in about 25 minutes or so. And of course, we'll be listening in to the launch communications by the team, making sure we keep you updated to their progress. We have a launch opportunity today at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time, but if for some reason the weather does not work out, we have opportunities the following days. Tomorrow, on Friday, August 1st, where we have an 85% go for weather, with the only concern being potential cumulus clouds like we're seeing today. The only thing there is that the ascent corridor goes up in terms of its risk, because there is a trough of disturbed weather coming across the country, and we'll be out into the Atlantic by then. So that is something that they'll have to monitor. That's why today is such a perfect spot, because that is low right now. That potential concern is at a very low state. So fingers crossed that we continue to have green conditions. We're green at the moment, and that's a good sign. We're T-minus 1 hour and 15 minutes until the liftoff of Crew 11 on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station. Thank you for joining us. Whether you're watching online or streaming, we are glad to have you here with us as we get ready to launch 4 humans to space from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Crew 11 will be the latest crew to fly as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which uses private companies to transport people to and from the orbiting lab from U.S. soil. Those people, NASA astronauts, like the one sitting right next to me right now, Nick Hague. It's been a great countdown so far. Weather is 90% go. We've got the excitement picking up as we draw closer to our T0. At this point, Nick, the crew has had, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of time to reflect. But the activity is going to start picking up.
Yeah, you know, everything, it's an instantaneous launch window, and so you have to start backing up from that of the things that need to be done. And the big one is right now they're sitting on a rocket that's empty. So they're not going anywhere unless they put some juice in the rocket. So that's going to start around the T-minus 35 time frame. And before we start to load all of that, those explosive materials, we need to make sure that the launch escape system is armed. And so we'll go through a debrief prior to that to make sure everybody's good. Then we'll arm the launch escape system and then start with that prop load. So there's some big things, and as you're sitting there, the reality of the situation, you understand how once they make the decision to go, once we launch that launch escape or arm that launch escape system, you're on a live rocket. And if something goes wrong, the system can make a decision that it's going to automatically pull you to safety. And it's designed to do that. You want it to do that, but you also realize that, you know, in a fraction of a second, you could be in a very different situation than you are right there.
You would know that well, as your mission had an in-flight abort in 2018 while flying Soyuz MS-10. But that launch escape system worked perfectly and brought you and your crewmate down safely to ground, to your family. And you dusted off your boots, got back on 5 months later, and successfully got into space on MS-12. So that launch escape system is a critical component to a successful mission.
Absolutely, and we test them rigorously. And you know, SpaceX did an in-flight abort test. They've done pad abort tests. You know, they've shaken this system out to make sure that when you need it, it'll be there for you.
This will be a 38.8 hour transit from the ground here at Kennedy to docking to the International Space Station. So the crew that you see there, I hope they have some audiobooks and some movies.
Well,
that's a long time.
There's an opportunity. There are 2 windows, and there's a heck of a view out there.
No doubt.
And you know, but they're not going to spend 40 hours strapped into seats like that. After they get into orbit, once the nose cone opens and they're kind of clear of the second stage, the upper stage, they'll be able to unstrap and take those suits off. They'll dry them out and put them away, and then they'll be essentially in short sleeve shirt, pants, and it's a pretty comfortable, spacious place to hang out in. And they'll be camping in Dragon for 40 hours until they get to the station. A few hours before they get to the station, they'll have to get back in the configuration that you see them here, do their leak checks with the suits, all stuff very similar to actually getting in the capsule on the launch pad.
Is it roomy in there? It doesn't look roomy from this shot, but I know there's a lot more to Dragon than what we're seeing right here.
Yeah, it is quite roomy. There's a whole bunch of volume, and when you're in space, you think about floating, you think about volume and not necessarily surface area, and so the volume you don't see is above the displays. You can fit a couple people up in the space on the top of the screen that's off screen that you just can't see. And then down by the cargo, underneath their feet, there's a whole bunch of space down there. So those footrests you can take off, kind of stuff them under the seats. It creates this nice big volume. You can pull out your food and your drinks. You can stick things to the walls. And, you know, but it's like camping in a SUV. There's room, but you're still in an SUV.
And you got to communicate, like, hey, excuse me, can I get over there, or can I get around you? And
yeah, you know, let me put up the privacy curtain. I have to use the restroom.
You're looking at a live view of Crew 11 at Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Stay right here. In just a few moments, we'll be expanding our live launch coverage. Good morning. You're watching live launch coverage of NASA and SpaceX's 11th rotational flight to the International Space Station. I'm NASA's Daryl Nail, joined once again by NASA astronaut Nick Hague, who's been with us for the past 3 hours. Liftoff is set for 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time from Launch Pad 39A here at the Kennedy Space Center. And before we continue, a quick reminder about Nick's incredible experience in space. General Nick Hague was selected as a NASA astronaut in 2013. His first flight to the space station in 2018 ended in a launch abort following a rocket booster failure on Soyuz MS-10, a dramatic escape that he and his Roscosmos crewmate survived safely. He returned to space in 2019. Here on Soyuz MS-12, spending 203 days on the ISS, and last fall, he commanded NASA's SpaceX Crew 9 mission there, as you see him getting ready to go with cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov. In total, Nick has logged 373 days in space and completed 4 spacewalks. It's so great to have you here today as you've been sharing your experience, the lessons you learned, your experience in space, and some of the human emotions that every astronaut goes through on a day like today.
Yeah, no, Daryl, it's a thrill to be here. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. We're getting ready to launch 4 humans into space. It is such an amazing thing that is so hard to do, and to be able to witness it and then just be a part of that legacy of doing it over and over again for decades is a thrill.
And a great responsibility by all involved. Crew 11 is launching from Pad 39A, and we're now just over an hour away. Once they arrive at the station, they'll join Expedition 7374, and in just 3 days, Crew 10 will return home. This will be what's called a quick 3+2 crew handover. You were Crew 9. You get a little time with the crew that's coming up, and it's important time.
It is, because you're living on the space station, so you train for how to work all the systems, but the real living aspect of it is something that you can really only do in microgravity, in that weightlessness, and it really is something that you try to maximize.
All right, let's take you through Crew 11's launch day preparations so far this morning. Nick Hague has been with us throughout. After waking up and grabbing a bite to eat, the crew suited up inside the historic crew quarters, a tradition that dates back decades. SpaceX teams helped them into their custom pressure suits, and just like the other crews before them, they gathered around a table for a card game to burn off any lingering bad luck before launch. After that, they followed in the footsteps of every NASA astronaut since Apollo 7 in 1968, walking out to greet a crowd of family, friends, and supporters with a big wave. Then it was into their Teslas for a security-escorted ride out to Launch Pad 39A, a 20-minute journey filled with anticipation as they drove up with their rocket in sight. Once there, they looked up, got a close-up look at the rocket, walked through the crew access arm, and climbed into their spacecraft. And now, there they are at the top of this rocket, inside that Endeavour capsule, and they are awaiting the next big milestones, the fueling of the rocket and the arming of the launch escape system. Throughout the broadcast, we are taking your questions to Nick Hague. Just use the hashtag AskNASA on the platforms Facebook, YouTube, X, and Twitch. We really want to hear from you. So send us those questions. He's got answers, and he's got good ones. Also, if you're watching YouTube, be sure to refresh your player or browser so you can join our live chat. At this time, we are expanding our coverage to include our partners at SpaceX. So let's welcome in the SpaceX and NASA commentators joining us live from Hawthorne, California, home to the SpaceX mission team. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, Daryl. So excited to be joining you and Nick Hague here and Joseph. I'm Somi Srivastava, a certification engineer here at SpaceX.
And I'm Joseph Zakshevsky with NASA Communications, and you're absolutely right. It's a thrill to be here today and exciting to be joining you again from Mission Control here in Hawthorne as we count down to liftoff of Crew 11 just over an hour from now. Crew 11 is our 11th operational mission with SpaceX, flying astronauts for long-duration missions to the International Space Station, and the 12th as a part of NASA's commercial crew program with SpaceX. Crew 11 has 2 first-time flyers on board, as well as a veteran NASA astronaut and a veteran Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA astronaut, making their return to microgravity. The multinational crew also represents 3 different space agencies: NASA, JAXA, and Roscosmos.
Today's crew will fly aboard Dragon Endeavour, which was the first operational Dragon to carry crew on board during SpaceX and NASA's Demo 2 mission in 2020 with astronauts Bob and Doug. Endeavour has been pretty busy since then, having also flown NASA's Crew 2 mission, AX-1, and NASA's Crew 6 and Crew 8 missions. This will be the first Dragon to fly 6 times. Overall, for the Dragon fleet, this will be Dragon's 49th visit to the space station and its 19th human spaceflight mission overall, and the 5th Dragon flight just this year.
Now, over the last 3+ hours, Crew 11 has been going through all the detailed process of getting ready for their mission, as you've been following along with Nick and Daryl from the Cape to the International Space Station. So let's introduce you to the crew. In the commander's seat is NASA astronaut Zena Cardman, who will be conducting her first spaceflight. She holds a Master of Science in Marine Sciences from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Cardman has experience with NASA research in the Canadian High Arctic and has supported real-time station operations and lunar surface exploration planning. Now, to the next of Zena is going to be pilot Mike Fincke, a veteran of 3 space flights. Fincke has completed an impressive 9 spacewalks, totaling 48 hours and 37 minutes of the time spent outside the orbiting laboratory. And he's also spent a total of 382 days in space, and Fincke is certified pilot for the Boeing Starliner, as well as SpaceX Crew Dragon, a part of the NASA's commercial crew program, as well as the co-pilot and flight engineer on Soyuz, and a mission specialist on the Space Shuttle, STS-134, that was Space Shuttle Endeavour, and fitting that he flies on Dragon Endeavour today. Serving as a mission specialist, or pardon me, Sonia, serving as a mission specialist is going to be Japan Aerospace and JAXA astronaut Kimiya Yui.
Yeah, and today's flight will be Yui's 2nd trip to the space station. He was selected as an astronaut by JAXA in 2009 and has logged 142 days in space. And to round it all out, Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov is also serving as a mission specialist and was selected as a cosmonaut in 2018 and will be making his first space flight today.
Now, as we get closer to 1 hour away from liftoff, let's take a look at what's going to be happening with Crew 11 once on board the International Space Station. Crew 11 will briefly become members of Expedition 73 and then Expedition 74 in the fall. Following departure of Soyuz MS-27 spacecraft, that's when the expeditions will change over, and that departure will feature NASA astronaut Johnny Kim. They'll also conduct space station maintenance and scientific research to understand plant cell division, finding alternatives to antibiotics and microgravity, investigate producing essential nutrients on demand for long-duration missions, and study how spaceflight affects human physiology and psychology. The The crew will also engage with students worldwide via the ham radio and use its existing hardware with newly integrated software to test a backup lunar navigation solution. So as the crew continues to prepare, as does the team on the ground, let's check in with another member of our broadcast team, Ronnie, here with SpaceX for an update on all things on the rocket, the capsule, the crew, and more. Ronnie?
Thanks so much, Joseph. I'm Ronnie Foreman, a senior sales manager, joining you today from the SpaceX Statics Desk. It continues to be a smooth countdown, and we are looking good for an on-time liftoff, which is at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time from the historic Launch Complex 39A in Florida. Now, coming up here in just about 15 minutes, we're going to be listening in for our team to report our final readiness for propellant load with a final go, no-go poll. Of course, here on the ground, teams will be staffed around the clock in mission control, which is just behind me here in Hawthorne, to monitor Dragon and the mission, not just today, but throughout the entire mission, from liftoff to Crew 11's arrival at the space station, all the way through splashdown when our astronauts return home. On console or on headset in mission control, as you can see on your screen right now.
Tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure.
Dragon copy.
So we've got some good live action there from our teammates in mission control. The mission director is the one in charge of the room and tasked with making those real-time decisions that ensure mission success. The person we just heard talking to the astronauts is the crew operations and resource engineer, who we'll refer to as the core throughout the broadcast. Our 4 additional team members are focused on vehicle systems, including avionics, navigation and control, software, propulsion, life support, and communication with ground support teams. Apart from mission control here, our Falcon 9 team is currently located in the Launch and Landing Control Center at Hangar X in Florida. So with less than an hour until launch, we are settling in for final checkouts, propellant loading, and launch. Back to you, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Ronnie, and thank you for those updates as we are getting that live action in real time, and we'll continue to monitor those communications with the crew and everything surrounding Crew 11 and their launch here today. Now, NASA has its own team members at NASA's Mission Control Center in the International Space Station's Flight Control Room, and that's in Houston, Texas, where another teammate of ours for today's broadcast, Sandra Jones, you've heard from her earlier. That's where she's located and has been busy preparing the International Space Station for Dragon's arrival. Now, the team in Houston is currently working through their go, no-goes and looking to confirm that the station is ready to receive Dragon Endeavour and the new crew. Now, following liftoff for the flight today, it's going to take about 39 hours, you've heard about phasing, so a good stair-step journey to get to the International Space Station with Dragon flying autonomously the entire way. Docking is targeted for the early morning hours on Saturday, August 2nd at 3 a.m. Eastern at 12 a.m. Pacific time. And just like autopilot on a commercial aircraft, the crew always has the ability to take manual control of the spacecraft if needed.
We are now at T-minus 58 minutes and counting down to today's launch. While we wait, let's check in with NASA's Sandra Jones at the Johnson Space Center to see how things are shaping up at Mission Control in Houston. Sandra, how's it going over there?
Tracking copy. Go for 4.100 set. We'll go.
And welcome back to Mission Control Houston here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. We are here in the hub of human spaceflight at NASA. The team here has pulled go for launch in the International Space Station, is ready for the crew to lift off as they begin their journey to the orbiting laboratory. At the time of launch, the space station will be traveling 260 miles over the South Pacific Ocean. In the home stretch of the rendezvous, NASA and SpaceX flight controllers will enter into what we call integrated operations, where both flight control teams will conduct a series of go, no-go polls for Dragon Endeavour's docking to the International Space Station. Rotational missions like Crew 11 help NASA continue to maximize the important research and technology demonstrations made possible only in the International Space Station's unique microgravity environment. The space station is critical for NASA to prepare for future commercial low Earth orbit destinations and to understand and overcome the challenges of long-duration spaceflight necessary for a long-term presence on the Moon and crewed missions deeper into the solar system, including on to Mars. Now, here's a closer look at the mission and what Crew 11 will have to look forward to during their stay aboard the International Space Station.
International Space Station, one of humanity's greatest accomplishments so far. 15 countries working together and adding more all the time that have helped plan, build, and fly the International Space Station. And it just shows what human beings can do when we work together.
As Crew 11, we are about to launch on board a Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station.
We are actually continuing ISS mission almost a quarter centuries. Right now, crew members are working very hard on the ISS. So we got that result, and actually we do more researches, then pass that information to crew 12.
Конечно, исследования на Международной космической станции, как я считаю, они очень важны, и они являются ключевым звеном в развитии технологии, науки и всей цивилизации. И все самое лучшее из космоса всегда приходит рано или поздно на Землю в виде новых открытий, новых приборов, возможностей и технологий.
I'm very excited to see what kind of payloads we get to work with. It's a really interesting day-to-day life where 1 hour you might be fixing the toilet and then the next hour you're working on a physics experiment studying fundamental processes of our universe.
We're going to be up there for a lot of time. And we're going to, every day, be in space, look at the Earth go by, and accomplish some really amazing science. We will do material science and human research in space, lots of experiments, and then maybe do some spacewalks. It's a really fun crew to be on. We're going to enjoy every moment, and we're going to help each other to be successful and accomplish our mission.
So we have various kinds of difficult training together. For example, emergency training in Building 9 or emergency training in SpaceX. This kind of training actually made our bond stronger.
Наш экипаж Crew-11 — это экипаж, который состоит из высокопрофессионально подготовленных людей. И мне нравится этот экипаж.
In some ways, my only expectation for the mission is to fly and return home safely and still friends when we get back. There are so many things to play around with, to study, to explore, and I'm really open to every possibility, ways to engage with the International Space Station.
We all came from other crews. Kimiya Yui, San, and I both came from Starliner 1. Oleg was on a Soyuz mission before this, and Zena, of course, was on Crew 9. But we all came together with our previous experience, melded into a really fun team. We're ready to go fly to our International Space Station.
And we're back at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida as we have a beautiful shot from our flight helicopter right there of the vehicle assembly building. The Artemis 2 mission, the rocket inside, will launch early next year. 4 astronauts around the moon. But we are focused now on that launch pad that you see right ahead of us, which is Launch Pad 39A and the Falcon 9 rocket with the Endeavour spacecraft on top of it. We've got 4 astronauts inside right now getting ready to launch to the International Space Station. And we've got Nick Hague, NASA astronaut, with us, co-hosting our launch broadcast today. And Nick, we have questions for you that have been coming in from social. Would you like to take a few more?
I'd love to take a few.
Been doing a great job so far, so let's put that next question up on the screen. This is coming in from #AskNASA. During CRS missions, these are cargo resupply missions with Dragon, I noticed that most of the time there is cargo in the trunk, but I never see any of the trunk during crew missions. Why is that?
Yeah, the crew missions fly up with an empty trunk, and that's really a mass constraint so that we can get those people up there. People require a lot of clothing, they require a lot of food, and all of those supplies have to get on, and so that comes at the expense of something in the trunk.
Great answer. T-minus 51 minutes and counting, and now we're counting down to the moments before we arm the launch escape system and start fueling the rocket. But before we do that, let's send it over to NASA's Tony Jaramillo, who is standing by live at one of the best viewing locations here at the Kennedy Space Center. She's joined by NASA's acting administrator, Secretary Sean Duffy. Tony?
Hey, thanks, Daryl. That's right. This is one of the best viewing locations where our guests have an amazing view of the rocket at the launch pad off to my left here. And joining me is Secretary Sean Duffy, NASA's acting administrator. Secretary Duffy, did you have a chance to speak to the crew before they headed out to the launch pad?
I did. I was behind the glass yesterday with them. Again, I would tell you, they're right out of central casting. So smart, so personable. Especially Mike, who actually flew on the shuttle missions. But this is Zena's first trip into space. So yeah, I got to talk to them. And again, they seemed a little nervous, but really, really excited. And today is the big day. I think they're just waiting for the launch and getting to the space station.
Absolutely. We're all getting ready for that launch. As you get ready for your first launch as administrator, what would you like to say to the NASA and space community that continue to help pave the way to the stars?
So listen, I think the team has been so impressive at NASA, but also our corporate partners, again, SpaceX, Blue Origin, Boeing, that are building the vehicles that get us into space. And again, when we go to the space station, critically important, but what we learn on these missions is what's going to get us to the moon, and then from the moon to Mars, which is, I think, the direction that NASA has to be. We are space exploration.
Absolutely. As you get ready for your first launch experience, what have you learned from Crew 11, and what are you looking forward to learning as you lead NASA?
Well, listen, I've learned that they're really well trained. I'm coming from DOT. The safety components that go into making sure these launches happen and happen safely is really, really impressive. The checks, double checks, triple checks. But moving forward, listen, I'm looking forward to Artemis. So a lot of people don't know Artemis, right? We're going to the moon. We're going back. And in America's 250th birthday, Artemis 2 is going to launch. We are going to go around the moon and back. We're not going to land in that one. But then Artemis 3, we're going back to the moon. We're going to land. We're going to stay for 6 days. The longest time before that was 3 days. And then from there, we're going to start deploying all of the assets we need to build our base. And we're going to stay on the moon. We're not planting our flag and leaving. We're going to stay, learn, and then go to Mars. Again, there's critical real estate on the moon. We want to claim that real estate for ourselves and our partners, which is going to be critical to be successful in that mission.
Absolutely. A lot of exciting missions coming ahead. I mean, you just mentioned one. I guess what should be that next exciting mission that the public can look forward to?
Well, I think it's going to be Artemis 2, right? Again, going back to the moon. And again, sometimes you might think we already did that, right? We did that in the Apollo program. But what's happening with technology to get us there? It's revolutionary. And what I love is sometimes people go like, well, what does this mean for us on Earth? Why are we doing this? Well, there's the exploration point of being an American, and that's what we do. We explore. We were pioneers. But also what happens with our scientists, our engineers, the machinists, the welders, the jobs that are created, and the quality and innovation in rockets that are happening in America, and the time frame in which we can produce them is amazing. And we have great competition. Obviously, this is a SpaceX. So over here, it's a SpaceX rocket, which they have been remarkable. But again, we have our other players who are chomping at the bit, and they're great partners. And again, we want to have a vibrant private sector business that partners with NASA as we accomplish these missions.
Absolutely, and we are very much looking forward to Artemis 2. Secretary Duffy, thank you so much for joining us. Now we'll send it back to our team in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Tony. That was an awesome interview with Senator Duffy. We are also really excited to see what Crew 11 does and accomplishes on their mission. But now let's bring it back to Mission Control here in Hawthorne, and the teams are continuing to prepare Falcon 9 and Dragon for launch. Falcon 9 is the first orbital-class rocket that is capable of reflight. Together, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than 519 launches and over 448 reflights.
Incredibly impressive. And today, the booster that Crew 11 will be using is going to attempt to land at Landing Zone 1, which is just down the coast from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This will be the third flight of this particular first-stage booster after supporting a Starlink mission earlier and recently Axiom Mission 4. That was the successful fourth private astronaut mission to the International Space Station.
Rapid reusability drastically reduces launch costs, and it's the key innovation that is making space more accessible for the entire space industry as a whole. While this young booster is on its third trip to space, we are working towards qualifying our fleet of Falcon boosters and fairings to support up to 40 missions each. For those of you following along, we're currently at 29 flights of a single Falcon booster, which is absolutely wild. Increasing Falcon's flight count provides valuable information and data on repeated reuse, which is a super critical element in making life multiplanetary. This same spirit of continuous iteration and innovation does not stop with Falcon 9. NASA awarded SpaceX a contract to develop the USD orbit vehicle, a modified Dragon designed to guide the space station through a controlled re-entry into Earth's atmosphere.
And when the time comes and the International Space Station reaches its end of operational life, which, trust me, it still has a lot of life to give right now, Dragon will help achieve that safety orbit. During the CRS-31 cargo resupply mission, Dragon successfully performed a reboost test for NASA that demonstrated Dragon's ability to change the station's orbit, and we'll see a similar test coming up, and that'll help inform plans for the upcoming commercial resupply mission number 33 with SpaceX, where Dragon will fly an extended mission and repeat that reboost demo with a modified trunk called the Boost Trunk. This modified trunk will give Dragon the ability to change the station's velocity by up to 10 meters per second. And testing these added capabilities will provide NASA with additional options for station operations in the coming years.
And yet another innovation that SpaceX is working on is the intravehicular spacesuits, or IVA suits, that astronauts wear during Dragon missions. These suits are worn by the astronauts while they're inside the spacecraft,
Countdown 1, the pull
versus the extravehicular, or EVA spacesuits that are...
Go for propellant load and launch. For all operators in MCCX and Hangar X, both control rooms will go into lockdown at T-minus 45 minutes and will remain in that state until LES is disarmed. All operators are to remain at their console and maintain a sterile cockpit until MD confirms successful disarming of the launch escape system following orbit insertion or propellant offload in the event of a scrub. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they will approve aborting the count. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands-off and relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual flight escape rules. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Arming crew arm for movement. Crew access arm retraction started.
And we are watching the crew access arm rotate away from the Dragon Endeavour and the Falcon 9 rocket. That was an incredible view, Nick, from up high, 275 feet in the air.
Yeah, and so as the arm goes away, that's really your first unobstructed view out those two windows inside the Dragon capsule. Unique to Dragon for Soyuz flyers, there were no your windows don't open until you get all the way up to orbit and come out of the fairing. So here you can see what the weather's doing outside for yourself.
And there they are, strapped in, Crew 11. Our next big milestone.
Crew access arm retraction complete.
As we hear that the crew access arm has completed its retraction. Our next big milestone is to have the astronauts drop their visors and start up for Section 7 in their operations.
SpaceX, you are go for Section 6, close visors and arm launch escape system.
Dragon copies, go for Section 6, closing visors and arming LES.
They may have renumbered the procedures because in the past it was Section 7. That's we may not have gotten that update. But this is a critical moment indeed. And that crew access arm, it can rotate quickly back to Dragon in this moment.
Dragon, 5 restores, arming LES.
In this moment in between before they have the launch escape system fully armed. Right?
Indeed. So the commands that are available to Zena and Mike at the displays, she's arming the launch escape system now. As that's armed, there's also a button that's going to show up that'll allow them to do an emergency egress, which will command that arm to swing over rather rapidly. And by the time you're out of your seat and ready to open the side hatch, the arm's in place so that you can get to the escape tower.
From the escape tower, of course, they would zip line down to safety, to waiting vehicles, and then exit the
launch escape system is verified armed.
The blast danger area. Now we have the launch escape system armed. This is a critically important system, Nick, that you actually had to use on one of your missions, MS-10, back in 2018, that saved your life and the life of your fellow crew member. It's part of spaceflight today. What does it provide for this crew in this moment?
Yeah, in this moment, it's its safety net. So the launch escape system is constantly trying to determine, is everything going okay? And it does that with looking at a bunch of different parameters. But as long as those stay within bounds, it doesn't do anything. But if something changes, or if there is a handle that the crew can initiate the launch escape, if that's activated, then this is going to separate them from that rocket and get them to a safe distance. And it's from the point right now on the pad all the way until they're in orbit. They've got that continual safety net there to protect them.
That capsule can get up in a hurry, too, as you were mentioning with these abort systems. They got to move quickly, going 436 miles per hour in a matter of 7.5 seconds. The Dragon can do that when it fires up its Super Draco engines if it were needing to get away from the pad in a hurry.
Yeah, absolutely. We're about to load the rocket full of fuel and oxidizer. And so if that energy is released, you need to be as far away from it as you can be. And so that escape system is designed to get them away in a heartbeat.
As long as everything continues nominally, it's our hope that that system will not be needed today. As we march towards loading those propellants Nick was talking about, that begins at T-minus 35 minutes and counting. Another big moment when they start flowing RP-1, Rocket Propellant 1, which is a refined form of kerosene, similar to jet fuel, as well as that oxidizer that together produce that 1.8 million pounds of thrust to lift that rocket and the crew into space.
Yeah, it's definitely an important moment, but it's also an exhilarating moment because this is when you start to hear the rocket come alive. The pumps and the fluid moving and the vibrations and it's, Dragon starts to have a personality, if you will.
You can hear those sounds, right? Valves moving and clicking.
You feel it, yeah. You hear it, you feel it.
T-minus 37 minutes and counting until liftoff. We're just 2 minutes away from beginning to load propellant into the Falcon 9 rocket. Weather is looking good at the moment. We are 90% go. There was a small concern for cumulus clouds in the area. That's just the 10%. Because of course, this is July in Florida. And you can see even now, Nick, the sea breeze from the cool ocean starting to create...
Tanks are venting for the start of propellant load.
Starting to create those little cumulus clouds bubbling up around the pad. We had a clear sky earlier. We're getting a little bit now. But overall, we're expecting that should be clear.
I see blue.
It's the glass half full. I like that. As long as we have that blue sky straight over top of the rocket and 10 miles out, we are good to go. And so far, right now, green conditions. The range is clear, the area around the pad. Boat traffic has been cleared by range operations. Our partners at the United States Space Force, Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where Nick, of course, you in the Space Force, a brigadier general, have cleared the range. They are currently monitoring it, making sure that no one can get into the path of the rocket from down on the ground or in the ocean, for the reason that if anything were to happen and any equipment or any spacecraft parts were to come down on them, you wouldn't want to pose a risk to those below.
Yeah, public safety is important, but it highlights just the expansive team that even for this one place, the number of organizations that have to work together and they're necessary for success.
Our 4-person crew, 2 NASA astronauts, 1 JAXA astronaut, and a Roscosmos cosmonaut, seated in launch position, monitoring their systems on their heads-up displays. In the foreground on the right, that is a launch tower for Starship, the vehicle that SpaceX is currently testing and developing for use, among other things, in the human landing system for NASA.
The launch auto sequence has started.
And that's the call that begins the propellant flowing into the rocket. And now we are on an autonomous timeline counting down to 0 at 12:09 p.m. Eastern Time. This is a good milestone. It really signals that we're going to space.
Yeah, it's you know, the clock is definitely ticking. Up to this point, the crew's been strapped in for a little more than 2 hours. There's been margin built into the schedule just in case, you know, the side hatch doesn't pass its leak check or a suit doesn't, you know, whatever pops up, we've got a little margin. As we get closer and closer to liftoff, that margin disappears. And so now we're on a pretty tight timeline all the way down. You know, 35 minutes to launch. The visors have been closed since they armed the launch escape. It's been about 8 minutes. It's at this point where I'm sitting there going, I wish I had scratched my nose before I put my visor down and trying to figure out how I'm going to do that, because they're going to be like this for another 45 minutes with the visors down.
Boy, that sounds like a long time when you put it that way. Well, there's great anticipation, right? This is the moment they've been training for, a year in the making. For Zena Cardman, who's essentially trained twice, even longer than that. They have been looking forward to this moment for so long and training so intensely, and here it is upon us.
Yeah, and you know, the time for reflection was in those 2 hours leading up to this point. At this point, now it's the mental rehearsing. They're chair flying exactly what's going to happen during the next 10 minutes when they lift off, and all the different things that they're going to need to do, as well as the couple few activities that they're going to have once they get to orbit.
Chair flying. That's what our astronauts are doing right now, and we'll stay with them as we count this down. For now, let's send it out to SpaceX in California.
As Daryl mentioned, propellant loading of both RP-1 and liquid oxygen began at T-minus 35 minutes, right on schedule. And weather is our main watch item right now. But I am hearing from our vehicle teams that everything looks good for both Falcon 9 and Dragon. So next up, at about T-minus 30 minutes, the SpaceX launch director will inform the crew when loading of cryogenic helium will begin. First on stage 1 and then on stage 2 about 4 minutes later. Stage 2 RP-1 loading should wrap up at about T-minus 20 minutes and 30 seconds. Then, as we approach T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds, we should hear a call out that Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading has begun. So with all of those consumables being loaded onto the rocket, if we have to call a hold for any reason at this point, like potentially due to weather, we would have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity, which is tomorrow, Friday, August 1st, at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. That's because we have an instantaneous launch window today. So let's take a minute to do a little orbital mechanics 101. An instantaneous launch window means that we need to launch at exactly the right time, and that's driven by our planned rendezvous point, which is the location where Dragon and Station meet in space. Right now, the International Space Station is orbiting the Earth at more than 17,000 miles per hour, and Dragon needs to catch up to it. That means we have to deliver Dragon to the correct orbit. We do that by timing its trajectory relative to the orbiting laboratory so that they're both in the same place in space at the same time. A precise liftoff time is crucial for hitting that rendezvous point. Now, again, that means that at this point, if we hear a hold called, we'll be standing down and likely targeting that backup launch opportunity tomorrow. For now, though, we're going to go ahead and hand it back to Soumya and Joseph to talk to us about West Coast recovery. Soumya?
Thanks for walking us through that, Ronnie. We are now at T-minus 31 minutes and counting, getting closer and closer to getting our Crew 11 astronauts into space. Once their mission is complete and it's time for our crew to splash down back on planet Earth, they'll be heading to one of several targeted sites supported by SpaceX. Until recently, Dragon recoveries primarily occurred off of the coast of Florida. This year, SpaceX moved Dragon recovery operations off the coast of California to allow Dragon to complete its deorbit before safely jettisoning the trunk over the Pacific Ocean. When they return, Crew 10 will be SpaceX's third crew mission to splash down in one of the new locations. From 2 was the first back in April this year, followed by Axiom 4 in July. The new splashdown locations are near LA, Oceanside, and San Diego. The recovery vessel, Shannon, will be stationed in Long Beach to support the new West Coast splashdown operations. Spreading these supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize the return opportunities, lowering the chance we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. And when the spacecraft re-enters, those in the immediate area may hear a brief double clap of a thunder-like sound known as a sonic boom.
I can't wait to hear one myself one day, but to hear everything that's gone on and to move operations to the West Coast has been incredible to watch, both from a SpaceX standpoint and from NASA, to see the teams across the country working together, the International Space Station Commercial Crew Program. And like Nick mentioned earlier, there's an army behind every one of those movements and getting ready and preparing for these West Coast splashdowns. So it's going to be phenomenal to watch and see NASA's first crew mission return on the West Coast. Well, back to today's mission, Crew 11, as they continue to get ready to go. They're inside now half an hour until launch time. Let's take a look at more and a bit more and learn about the astronauts flying today.
I think it's really innate in our human nature to want to keep exploring and to keep pushing boundaries. Everything that we do in space is ultimately for Earth and for the human species.
We are having a lot of good experiments on orbit, making new medicines. That is actually good for everybody.
By understanding how to live and work in space like we have with the International Space Station, we can now become a multiplanetary species by having bases on the Moon and bases on Mars.
И выполнение полета в космос, на мой взгляд, важно, потому что в конечном счете необходимо человечеству будет двигаться в дальний космос для того, чтобы открывать новые миры, исследовать новые и новые горизонты.
For me, it's a really compelling goal to go farther and farther afield in space and pushing our boundaries as a human species that way, learning more about our own home planet as we try to go farther.
We've been going and living aboard the International Space Station for 25 years. We're ready to make the next steps. We're ready to go to the Moon. We're ready to go to Mars. We're ready to explore the solar system. We understand the effects of what life in space does to the human body, and we need to continue those studies. We need to continue getting ready and get ready and go to the Moon and Mars, and that's why it's important to go to space.
All right, let's head back out now to a launch viewing location where Tony's at for another interview with some special guests. Tony?
Hey, thanks, Daryl. That's right. Joining me is Dr. Stephen Platts and Dr. Lori Glaze to talk to us a little bit about the human research that's going to be on this mission. You know, Steve, can you tell us a little bit more about what human research Crew 11 will be conducting?
Sure. We're very excited for the launch. We have 10 experiments flying on Crew 11. Everything from cardiovascular systems, central nervous system, all the way to genomics, the full breadth, and addressing many very important risks for us to get to the moon and Mars.
That's a lot. You know, speaking of the moon and Mars, Lori, how does the human research conducted on space station help us for those future missions to the lunar surface and eventually Mars?
I'm so glad you asked that question. You know, a lot of times we talk about the future, you know, we're going to explore the moon and Mars. It's here. We are actually less than a year away from our first crewed launch, where we're going to send 4 crew out and around the moon for 10 days and bring them back. And then about a year after that, we're going to land on the moon. And we need to be ready, right? We need to be ready for the trips to the moon and then eventually to Mars. Our crew are going to need to be able to thrive in an environment where they're in microgravity, perhaps for as long as a year. And then we're going to need them to perform on the surface of Mars under 1/3 gravity and do their exploration activities. So we really need to understand how they're going to react and respond to that environment. And the experiments that are being done on space station today, it's such a unique laboratory where the kinds of things that Steve's talking about, we can study physiological responses to bones, muscles, blood flow. Mental health is incredibly important part of this activity. And the experiments that we can do, for example, growing plants without soil, recycling water. If we have the ability to recycle water, maybe 98% of the water that the crew uses, that's less resources we need to bring along. And then sensors that can detect, for example, solar storms so that our crew can take shelter or protect themselves while they're on their journey. So again, the experiments that are being done are incredibly important to our planning, which, as I said, we're launching in less than a year. We need to be ready.
That's right. I mean, a ton of valuable research that we are gathering. You know, speaking then on, you know, the research for Crew 11, Steve, I heard, you know, there's a new experiment that's going to space station. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, that's called manual piloting, and what that is looking for is the ability for the crew to land a vehicle on the lunar surface. So we're looking at the sensory motor aspects, balance, cognition, some of the things that Lori was talking about, and putting them all together, and we have a simulator that actually moves in all dimensions and allows the crew to feel like they're actually landing a spacecraft. And we're doing that pre-flight. We have some devices on station where we can do in-flight measures as well as post-flight. So that will give us a great idea of what we need to do to prepare the crew to land on the lunar surface.
That's great. I mean, you know, Lori, tell us a little bit more about those benefits of traveling then beyond low Earth orbit now.
Well, you know, the reasons we're going to the moon and eventually the ability to establish a permanent presence on the surface of the moon, a base per se that we can go back and visit multiple times, is the science that we want to conduct on the surface of the moon will be incredible. We're going to a place that is totally different than where the Apollo astronauts landed, so totally unique environment, different lighting conditions, different geology of the rocks. We anticipate there is water ice beneath the soil in some places near the South Pole where we're going to land humans for the first time ever. So we will be able to do incredibly unique science, but we'll also be able to continue the human research aspects for longer duration stays on the surface of the moon where we're trying to live and work, and that will again feed forward to help us be better prepared for Mars.
Absolutely, a ton of exciting things coming up. Thank you both so much for joining us. Now we'll send it back to Daryl and Nick.
Thank you, Tony. Crew 11's time in orbit will teach us how to keep humans healthy in space for the long haul. Meanwhile, on the moon-facing side of NASA's work, Artemis II astronauts, including Commander Reed Wiseman, are training for a very different challenge, a 10-day mission around the moon. And before they launch, NASA and the Department of Defense are making sure they know how to get them home, even in an emergency. Here's Reed with a behind-the-scenes look.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Reed Wiseman, commander of Artemis II. I'm here at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and as you can see, work is well underway for our next mission to the moon, both on land and off the coast. Back in June, teams with NASA and the Department of Defense used an area of open water off KSC to rehearse procedures for a possible rescue after an ascent abort from the SLS rocket. Instead of using astronauts, they used a set of test mannequins staged inside the crew module test article, a full-scale mock-up of the Orion spacecraft. You can see pararescuers jumped from a plane into the water with their specialized equipment, then approach the spacecraft, open the capsule, and transported the mannequins to the helicopter safely for medical care. This was one of 2 emergency procedures they rehearsed should they need to rescue me, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy during an abort scenario. And back here on land, now that the upper stage integration is complete inside the vehicle assembly building, teams with NASA's Exploration Ground Systems have been running SLS integrated testing, where they powered up both the core stage and boosters for the first time in preparation for our 10-day journey around the moon. That's a look at your Artemis Moon Minute.
For more Artemis updates, scan the QR code on your screen right here or visit nasa.gov/Artemis-Roman numeral 2. Nick, I know you're excited for Artemis.
Absolutely.
One of your fellow astronauts you spend a lot of time with, Christina Cook, is going up.
Yeah. You know, the astronaut corps is small, so you know everybody in the corps, and so I'm excited to see all 4 of them take their trip around the moon. It's exciting.
It's been a long time for NASA, more than 50 years. All right, now let's send it back to SpaceX in Hawthorne, California.
Thank you very much, Daryl and Nick, and it was impressive to hear that interview and that Moon Minute, and it's amazing to see how interwoven what's being done with these crewed missions to the International Space Station and how they impact moving forward and the Artemis campaign. So incredible to see about how those 2 crews and how those 2 missions work together. Now, as we get back to today's launch, we're now approaching 20 minutes away in the countdown for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the International Space Station. So let's take a look at Falcon 9 that's on your screen now, and that is a 2-stage rocket that is 29 feet tall and getting ready for liftoff, and again, approaching 20 minutes away. At launch time, it produces more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust. So, that is impressive firepower.
Yeah, and rockets like Falcon 9 don't use all that thrust just to go straight up. Early in flight, Falcon 9 performs a gravity turn, which is a smooth pitch maneuver.
RP1 load complete.
Hearing good callouts over the nets, which is a smooth pitch maneuver that tilts the rocket sideways to build up horizontal velocity. You may hear this callout about 10 seconds into launch as the vehicle is pitching downrange. And once the first stage completes its portion of the mission, it shuts down and separates.
And a stage rocket like Falcon 9 sheds that booster to eliminate the weight and uncover the Merlin vacuum engine on stage 2. To reach orbit, the vehicle needs to go fast, hitting an orbital velocity of about 28,000 kilometers an hour. And that's just to keep it from falling back to Earth due to gravity. That's fast enough to lap the Earth in about 90 minutes or fly from New York to here in Hawthorne, California in under 10 minutes, which is about 7 times faster than the U.S. Air Force's SR-71 Blackbird.
After stage separation, today's booster will be landing at Landing Zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. This particular booster will be returning to Earth for its 3rd time. The second stage takes over from there, powered by a single Merlin vacuum engine, also known as the MVAC. With its extended nozzle and optimized design, the MVAC drives maximum performance, producing 220,000 pounds of thrust in the vacuum of space. On today's mission, we'll light that engine 4 times before deploying the final payload into orbit.
Now, so much of what makes Falcon 9 remarkable happens in flight.
SpaceX for countdown check-in brief.
Dragon's with you.
Okay, Zena, we have healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon 9, just like last time, so prop load is proceeding nominally. We do have one watch item that has popped up. There is a pop-up storm cell that is just to the north of the pad. Currently not violating any LCCs, but we are monitoring this particularly closely as it's moving offshore. We'll let you know if it starts trending towards blocking launch today, but again, not expecting that at this time.
Dragon copies all. We've got a healthy Dragon, healthy Falcon. We're proceeding towards launch. Only watch item is a storm cell that is north of the pad moving offshore. We'll continue monitoring, but otherwise looking great.
That's a good readback.
And great communications there from the team here at SpaceX on the ground in Hawthorne, monitoring. What we've been keeping an eye on throughout the broadcast here today is that weather popping up, but everything else looks strong and healthy. The Falcon 9, the capsule itself, and the crew, they're still ready to roll as we're now about 17 minutes away from the launch. Now, talking back to Falcon 9, and what remarkable happens is what happens in flight. It's the first stage, landing itself on land or on a drone ship in the middle of the ocean, the fairings that can parachute back, all ready for another flight to space. Every part of Falcon 9 is a part of a larger design that comes together to do one thing, and that's escape Earth's gravity.
And getting to space is the first step to building our multi-planetary future. At the top of Falcon 9 today, the crew is sitting inside Dragon Endeavour. Dragon has played a significant role in advancing our future in space by safely transporting crew to and from the International Space Station. There are currently 5 Dragon spacecraft supporting human spaceflight missions: Endeavour, Resilience, Endurance, Freedom, and our 5th and final Dragon, Grace, which just launched the Axiom 4 mission last month. Designed with safety as the highest priority, Dragon is capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit.
The Dragon spacecraft has
Stage 2 LOX load has started.
16 Draco thrusters. As you heard that great call out there, as the fueling continuing to make its way into the rocket. And those 16 Draco thrusters can be used in space to help navigate the spacecraft to its destination, each providing 90 pounds of force. Now, that doesn't include the 8 Super Draco thrusters used for an abort, which are no longer active once the crew is in orbit.
To date, Dragon has been to orbit 53 times, including 48 trips to the International Space Station and 18 human spaceflight missions. And as we mentioned earlier, today's Dragon, Endeavour, has been pretty busy, having also flown NASA's Crew 2 mission, Axiom 1, and NASA's Crew 6 and Crew 8 missions. Overall, for the Dragon fleet, this will be Dragon's 49th visit to the space station and its 19th human spaceflight mission overall, and the 5th Dragon flight this year. Dragon is the first private spacecraft to take humans to the orbiting lab, having flown 300,000 pounds of cargo and more than 1,000 experiments to space, as well as 70 crew members representing 20 countries. Our versatile Dragon spacecraft can autonomously dock with the International Space Station when outfitted with a docking adapter, which is just how it's configured for today's flight. And when it's not going to the space station and it's in free flyer mode, the docking adapter can be swapped out for a cupola, as it was back during the Inspiration 4 mission. Another option we have is the Skywalker hardware, which supports extravehicular activities or spacewalks, as we did during the Polaris Dawn mission. And amazingly, there has been a Dragon in space for 1,358 consecutive days since Crew 3.
Now, with T-0 coming up in about 14 minutes or so, our teams are continuing to do a series of system checks to ensure Dragon and the Falcon 9 are ready, with fueling continuing to get underway. And again, we're monitoring that weather that the teams here at SpaceX are keeping an eye on and have been relaying up to the crew. So let's check in with Ronnie with the latest.
Thanks, Joseph. So as you've heard, we are still on track for an on-time launch today, and we're monitoring lots of different factors as we get closer to liftoff. Most importantly, both Dragon and Falcon 9, of course carrying our Crew 11 astronauts, continue to be healthy. You heard that we've wrapped up Stage 2 RP1 loading, and that Stage 2 liquid oxygen loading also wrapped up on time at about 16.5 minutes to go. The launch escape system is also armed. That's, of course, the system designed to propel Dragon away from Falcon 9 in the unlikely event of an emergency. And the Eastern Range is monitoring keep-out zones along the flight ascent corridor and is tracking no issues for today's launch. Weather continues to be a watch item, so we'll keep an eye on that. But for now, we are go for the 6th mission of Dragon Endeavour. It is a fantastic milestone for Dragon, and here at SpaceX, we could not be more excited. So to add a little something extra to our celebration, I've got our Dragon plush hanging out with me here in front of Mission Control. Now, this guy is not the zero gravity indicator for today's mission, but do keep an eye out for that once Crew 11 reaches orbit. This is, though, a fun nod to all the successful flights that Dragon has made, and all of the crews that we have been so lucky to work with. I think this is a great way to celebrate today's flight milestone, and I really have appreciated joining you all. Thanks for joining me at the status desk for all of our coverage today. With that, go Dragon, go Crew 11, and I'm going to hand it back to Sandra for status update from Houston.
Thanks, Ronnie. That plush is cute. I'm going to have to get one for myself. Back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, teams continue to work around the clock to monitor activities aboard the orbital outpost. Leading the team inside the room today is NASA Flight Director Scott Stover. The team in Mission Control and the team in Hawthorne, as well as the astronauts aboard the International Space Station, will track the autonomous docking of Dragon Endeavour when they enter into joint operations. This will happen when the spacecraft enters the approach ellipsoid, which is the invisible boundary stretching 4 by 2 by 2 kilometers that helps us monitor all arriving and departing spacecraft. It's essentially the neighborhood of the International Space Station. Once docked, crew members in both Dragon and aboard the International Space Station will perform a series of leak checks and then will work to open the spacecraft's hatch for Crew 11 to float into the space station and begin their stay. We anticipate that the hatch will be opened about an hour and a half after docking occurs. When they enter the orbital outpost, crew will be greeted by the rest of the Expedition 73 crew and will come together for opening remarks. But for now, that's going to be all from us here in Mission Control for today, as the anticipation continues to build for launch in less than 20 minutes from now. So, how's it looking on the Space Coast, Daryl?
Well, we've got a mix in the weather. There's some clouds that are building, but so far still looking good, okay for launch. It's a watch item at the moment, and so we're keeping our eyes to the skies. Also, this is a first for our broadcast team right here. An astronaut who once sat right here where Nick is sitting as a commentator is now minutes from flying to space. Zena Cardman was once in this very seat, the one that Nick Hague is sitting in now, less than a year ago. She was supporting Nick as he launched with Crew 9. She was originally set to command that mission, but when Crew 9 had the shift and had the change up of assignments, she had to step back to help get the team off the ground. And here's what she said, Nick, after watching you and your crew go into space.
Every crewed launch that I have ever watched has really brought me a lot of emotion. This one today was especially unique. I think it was hard not to watch that rocket lift off without thinking, that's my rocket and that's my crew. But I also know that I'm not the only person who can think that. Of course, we have Stephanie Wilson here today, but I mean, there are many, many people who made this mission happen, and there are people on orbit who will be taking this capsule home. And it makes me very proud to know that I am one of many people who can say, that's my crew, that's my rocket. Makes me really proud, makes me feel very connected to this mission that we all get to take part of. Go Crew 9.
An emotion-filled Zena Cardman in that moment, and she is going to give us some words any moment now.
Dragon SpaceX, confirm crew displays are configured for launch.
Your thoughts on hearing that after you launched?
SpaceX, Dragon, displays are configured for launch. It is our honor, our privilege, and our choice to take part in something much greater than any individual, but it's the individuals who make this endeavor great. To each of you at SpaceX and NASA, to our partners at JAXA and Roscosmos, to family, friends, and mentors, you fly with us today. Arigato gozaimasu. Spasibo большое. Thank you. With gratitude and focus, Crew 11 is ready.
And more words.
Crew 11, sentiment is the same on the ground from everyone staying here. We have enjoyed working with you in the preparation for the mission. Looking forward to doing the same in flight. Good luck. Enjoy the ride.
And more words from Zena Cardman. We just heard from her live.
Yeah, it's like I started the show. There isn't any place I'd rather be than here today. What Zena said is so true, you know, and it's this palpable feeling that, hey, that's my crew. Those are my friends. You know, hey, that's my commander. And just to be here and know that, you know, I've done my small part to help support them along their way, and there'll be more support that happens in the future. And to be able to see behind the scenes everybody else that is contributing to that is, that's what makes this all so special, is it's not about the individual. Spaceflight has nothing to do with individuals. It's all about us working together.
100%. Well said, Nick. And kudos to both of you for showing an immense amount of class. You signed up to do this role almost immediately after getting into space, and we heard from you saying, I want to be there for Zena. Thank you for being here. And go Crew 11. And so with just 7 minutes to go, a little over 7 minutes, we want to send it back to Hawthorne for the final countdown.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Nick. And those were beautiful words from Zena Cardman. You can hear the emotions behind them and what they're looking forward to getting ready for launch. And they say Crew 11 is ready. As you mentioned, about 7 minutes and change to go until we have liftoff, and we're still awaiting the final propellant loading to complete, and then we'll get into engine chill, and more milestones will be along the way. It's going to be about a 9-minute ride to orbit, and then Dragon in the second stage will continue to coast for a few minutes after that once the first stage and second stage have performed. You'll be hearing some of those performance calls as we get into that final countdown, and then after liftoff. These are SpaceX flight controllers reporting on the trajectory, speed, booster, and performance, and the key milestones, but there are some other calls calls that you'll hear the crew make as well, especially after liftoff. The crew will report out a few number and letter combinations which mark different abort zones throughout the flight up the eastern seaboard. The first two, 1A and 1B, are abort modes available.
Has started.
And right on cue for the engine chill that has begun. And those first stage abort zones, again, 1A and 1B for that first stage. Next are 2A through E. Those will come into play once the second stage kicks in, though we'll only hear that 2A call. And diverting a little bit from the other naming systems, we'll hear the call Shannon, which refers to Shannon, Ireland. This means that the crew could target off the coast of Ireland if they needed to abort late in that second stage burn. You'll hear these different calls throughout the flight uphill along the way, and the performance callouts from the guidance, navigation, and control officer, and also the propulsion lead. So we're coming up on T-minus 6.5 minutes. We heard that the engine chill is started, and that means that that small trickle of fuel making its way into the engine to prime it
Stage
for
one fuel load
launch.
complete.
So we already heard that stage one engine chill has already started, which is a key process that prepares the engines for flight. Right now, the prop in the tanks is isolated from the engines. Sorry. The prop in the tanks has already started trickling into the Merlin engine pumps as the engines are chilling for the start sequence. And we do this because the super chilled and densified liquid oxygen is really, really cold. And we use this process to bring the engine hardware down to a cooler temperature before flowing all of the LOX and propellant into it during flight. At liftoff, Falcon 9 is consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. So engine chill helps us to prevent thermal shock and ensures nominal engine performance. Shortly, coming up, we should also hear the call out for stage 1 RP1 load completion.
As you mentioned, engine chill is now underway. We're getting ready for those next callouts that'll be coming up here shortly, as we are now almost 5 minutes away from liftoff, and that's where they're going to configure for terminal count. And that will be a call for Dragon to configure to terminal count and transition into internal power.
Falcon 9 tanks are pressurizing for strong back retract.
And at this point, the Dragon onboard
is
computers
configured for terminal count.
Perfect, right on schedule, and those onboard computers now taking control of the spacecraft. You also heard the call out for pressurizing to give extra structural stability for the rocket as it makes its way uphill. So we're approaching now 4.5 minutes away, and then around that time, you'll hear, you mentioned it there, the strong back retract, and that'll allow provide access to Falcon 9's fueling lines and umbilicals for prop load and a different gases being loaded on board. But right now, everything's starting to wrap up, and Somya, it's exciting to get to this.
Strong back retract has started.
Exciting to get to this point of the countdown. As you heard it right there, the strong back retract is on its way.
So we have a great view on our screen of the clamp arms opening up just around stage 2 under Dragon in preparation for strong back retract. We have some really great views on our screen of that happening right now.
And you can see it just moving ever so slightly away from Falcon 9 and the Dragon spacecraft, those clamp arms opening. And again, those late stages, those fuel lines starting to wind down their fueling procedures as we're about to hit T-minus 3 minutes until launch. Second stage loading will wrap up shortly after the first, and you've probably noticed those white clouds venting from around the rocket. That isn't smoke.
Stage
That's
1 LOX load complete.
That's condensation, as stage 1 liquid oxygen loading has been completed. As liquid oxygen warms slightly inside the tanks, some of it boils off, and that gas is vented to manage pressure. When the vented oxygen hits that warm Florida humid air,
in terminal count and on internal power,
it instantly condenses into those clouds. As you just now heard, the Dragon now in prop load complete on into internal power. It's fully fueled. The rocket and Crew 11 are ready for liftoff. And this rocket now transitioning into internal power. The gas closeouts will also begin to purge all the feed lines and allow Falcon 9 to be isolated. And then they'll get vented overboard through the umbilicals and strong back retract.
So coming up in just under 20 seconds, we should hear the call out that LOX load will be completed on stage 2, which will mean that there will be 1 million pounds of propellant loaded onto Falcon 9 at that point. We're coming up on that call out in just a few seconds from now.
Stage 2, LOX load complete.
Now that that's complete, we will vent down the TE, which will produce a white cloud off the side of the rocket, which is totally normal and expected.
Dragon is in auto idle.
Auto idle puts that rocket in a state the flight computers understand before it takes over. And that's making sure the transition to the final countdown is smooth and all the flight computers on board are in sync with each other and configured for launch. We're now 90 seconds away from
Ground
launch.
gas closeouts are started. Expect loud venting.
And there's the gas closeout that Soumya was just talking about. And now inside 80 seconds from the launch of NASA SpaceX's Crew 11.
On countdown net, hold, hold, hold. We are standing down for violation of weather rules.
I'll try to sequence is aborted.
So as you've heard over the nets, we did just have a hold called at the T-1 minute mark.
And that hold due to weather, that was something that we've been keeping an eye on. Our team here in SpaceX and Hawthorne, as well as in NASA, we're monitoring that throughout today's broadcast in preparation for launch. But unfortunately, standing down looks to be the case as the weather has created that violation. But we'll continue to monitor and await for the news officially from the teams on the ground as that weather violation looks to come into play for launch today.
Dragon SpaceX, bad luck on weather there. We just got clipped by a cumulus cloud right over the pad, so ended up scrubbing for weather. With that, you are go to proceed to 5.100 for launch scrub. We'll begin offloading the rocket.
Dragon copies all 5.100. Too bad, but we'll be ready next time.
And there you heard the call up to the crew that unfortunately the weather just not playing alongside with today's excitement of the launch for NASA SpaceX's Crew 11. But we have mentioned a couple times throughout the broadcast today that there are backup opportunities starting as early as tomorrow. 11:43 a.m. Eastern time is what the target time is for tomorrow's next attempt for launch for Crew 11. But it came right down to the wire, Soumya, with that T-1 minute. But you heard on the loops there that it was just clipped, as they said, by a cumulus cloud to violate the weather rule. So unfortunately, today's launch attempt has been scrubbed due to weather.
You know, and there are 1,000 different ways that a launch can go wrong. And so we want to ensure the safety and reliability, even if it is a weather scrub. So we will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures and make their way back to crew quarters for now.
And you said the key word right there, and that is safety, the safety of the crew and everyone involved on this launch and opportunity, because that's what was talked about even in yesterday's press briefings with all the program managers and representatives of NASA, SpaceX, Roscosmos, and JAXA, is that we'll launch when we're ready and everything lines up the way it needs to be. And unfortunately, due to weather, not the case today. But to recap and look back at everything that Crew 11 has done, they walked right up to the T-1 minute to launch mark as everybody was safe and sound. They went through their procedures earlier today, did soup-leaten checks, also did communications checks, and were able to go all the way to the pad, climb aboard the Dragon spacecraft, and get ready for launch today. But again, unfortunately, due to weather, it will not happen, and we will target that next launch attempt, which again is going to be tomorrow at 11:43 a.m. Eastern time. We will stay with coverage of the crew as we follow them through the egress procedures, getting out of the spacecraft and making their way back to crew quarters. And to do that, we're going to head back out onto the Space Coast of Florida and join Daryl Nail and team as today's launch attempt for NASA's SpaceX Crew 11 has been scrubbed due to weather. Daryl?
All right, thank you, Joseph and Samia. We appreciate your coverage there. And now back here with NASA astronaut Nick Hague. We just returned from being outside. We were planning to watch the launch right there from a nice viewing spot here at the press site, the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. And unfortunately, even as we walked out, Nick, we got a sense that this might not happen because clouds had been building in and around the area. We had dark clouds overhead of us. We got up on our area to watch the launch and heard a Phase 1 lightning alert go off. And then I just, my heart kind of sank a little bit because I thought that might be it.
Yep, then you see the clock stop.
Yes.
And you know it's happened. So it's disappointing. But there's a reason we do it, and that's to keep everybody safe.
It's so critically important. As you look at this shot here, you can see that just right over top, you've got some darkened clouds in the area. This was a result of a sea breeze that when we started the day, the launch weather officer improved our forecast to 90% go, but there was a 10% concern that the sea breeze was going to develop earlier in the day than originally forecast. And that sea breeze, which is very, this is very common here in Florida in July, once that air starts moving over the ocean and onto land and meets the warm air, our blue skies went to cumulus clouds scattered across the spaceport. And we just had one get just inside the 10-mile radius.
Dragon SpaceX, for awareness, we're looking at approximately 50 minutes for the prop offload time. So it should be approximately 1700 UTC when we are able to proceed with 5.100 and rotate the seats.
Dragon copies. We're looking at about 50 minutes for prop offload. So 1700 ETC for the rest of 5.100 and seat rotation.
Good readback.
And so what is that, real quick, what does that mean, Nick? They are going to rotate the seats?
Yeah, so it's important to know that right now you're looking at a fully fueled rocket with an armed launch escape system. And so the crew is in the same posture that they were in the 45 minutes leading up to launch. They've got to be in that posture until they can offload all that propellant, which takes about the exact same amount of time to offload as it took to put on, as well as disarm that launch escape system. And so this is a very active rocket right now, and they, that launch escape system, if something went wrong, even now it's still protecting them.
It's a great note there. But this is very much a dynamic situation even now with a scrub called. The teams have to work through their procedures to safe the launch pad, the rocket, and the capsule from being just minutes from launch. And we were in that posture ready for launch, and now we have to undo that, right?
Yeah,
very carefully.
You got to back out of all of that, and then once the rocket is defueled, we've got all the fuel out of there. We can disarm the launch escape system. You still need the pad team to be able to come and get out there to get into the white room and help open up that side hatch and get the crew out. And so the scrub process is not a quick one.
Just to finish a thought that I had said, and I think this view on the left basically shows you what the issue is. That's rain on the right half of the screen there. That's a rain cloud with rain coming down. And on the left hand, we were dealing with sun poking through the clouds on our side. We could literally see the clouds kind of going over top of our heads, getting close to the pad. And the standoff area is 10-mile radius around the pad for these dark clouds and cumulus clouds. And that is a safety factor. We'll talk a little bit about that. That is because you don't want to send a rocket through a tall cloud like that could generate some energy from the rocket passing through it.
Yeah, just the same as if you're on a commercial airline flight, you don't necessarily want your pilot to take you through a severe thunderstorm. We don't want to do that with a rocket.
And so we are erring on the side of safety in this situation. But as Nick pointed out, The rocket that you are looking at is a fully fueled, ready to launch Falcon 9. As we now see, they are starting to allow some of the liquid oxygen to vent off as they begin detanking the rocket from its super chilled liquid oxygen and its RP-1, which is the kerosene-based propellant.
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating about 45 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copies, additional 4 or 5 minutes for prop offload.
Now, as you recall your procedures for the crew getting out of the capsule and getting back into their vehicles and going back, take me through the timeline of the scrub procedure.
Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward procedure. You're running the launch procedure in reverse, essentially, and so they're strapped in. The seats are rotated up in a launch configuration. As soon as they detank, they're going to disarm the launch escape system. So you're looking at it's 45 minutes to get rid of the liquid oxygen and RP-1. Once that's off, then they'll be able to disarm the launch escape system, rotate the seats down. At that point, the arm will come over and the ground team, the pad team will be able to come up there. They'll open the side hatch and then help them get out of the capsule just like they helped them get into the capsule. So you're looking on the order of, an hour, a little bit longer.
And you want that rocket fully detanked?
Absolutely. You've got cryogenic propellants, oxidizers,
moving, flowing,
and you want to make sure that that's all secure before you put people around it. That's the way the system is designed. It's different on other launch vehicles. Other launch vehicles, the Soyuz I launched on was fueled when we showed up to it. But while you're moving the fuel on and off, you minimize the number of people that are around.
That's exactly right. And the SLS rocket is similar in that it gets fully fueled and tanked, and then they bring the astronauts on board. SpaceX does it so they can do that tanking as the very last part of the mission timeline. And this also allows for a quick tanking, relatively speaking, for a rocket. And then allows you to detank it. But they're using super densified liquid oxygen as well. So you mentioned it. High energy systems are engaged here, and so we are now unwinding that as we proceed through the scrub procedure. If you're just joining us, we scrubbed this launch at T-minus 1 minute and 7 seconds until liftoff. We had a healthy rocket, a healthy spacecraft, we had a clear range, and we just had weather in the area, a cumulus cloud that just clipped the radius nearby within the launch area, the 10-mile radius. It got into that standoff area, and that is what caused the scrub for the day, because that is a safety measure to keep the crew that you see on the right side of your screen safe from any potential hazards that could develop as a result of the weather. And this view gives you a clear look at exactly where the clouds ended up now just about 10 minutes after when we were supposed to lift off, right over top of us. They were certainly in the area. We heard the lightning warning go off, and so we knew when we were standing out there watching this launch that that was a bad sign. But it's interesting. I've seen it go both ways, right? Where we get a launch forecast that is 85% no-go, but you find a hole in the clouds that's just 10 miles in radius, and it's all around the launch pad, and you can launch.
Yep.
This is the opposite of that. We had 90% go with only a 10% chance, but this is Florida in July. These things can pop up literally just from, the daily sea breeze collision that we have over land.
Yeah, weather is dynamic, and we throw a lot of technology at it, we throw a lot of science at it, and it still baffles us sometimes. So the mental shift that you make when this happens, you've got to attempt to not make the mental shift immediately, because it is it is a live launch escape system that you're in, but inevitably there's the, okay, so once we get out of here, what's the next step? When is our next opportunity going to be? They've already been looking at weather predictions for days out, so they understand what the impacts to the phasing and the mission profile might be, the potential for bad weather in the upcoming days, and so they're already starting to think about, okay, so what's the next opportunity, and then having to get into the psyche of, okay, let's do this again, and it is to the T, to the minute, do it again. So it's very much a Groundhog Day.
All of it, every single minute of roughly what do we 6-hour countdown where it begins for the astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned the backup days. Joseph mentioned those before. He tossed over to us, but it's worth mentioning again. Our backup opportunities are tomorrow, Friday, with a T0 at 11:43 a.m. Eastern Time. Our coverage would begin at 7:30 a.m. on NASA Plus. The weather for tomorrow is just a little bit better than it was today, but what does that tell you, right? We scrubbed today. It's 85% go. The concern is the same, because the same pattern could develop. It's cumulus clouds building up and around the pad, but I will add this. We have moved a little earlier in the day, so the later that sea breeze develops, the better opportunity we'll have for getting some clear weather. If we can't do it tomorrow, then our next opportunity would be Saturday, August 2nd. We'd still have an 85% go for Saturday. Same concern with cumulus clouds here at the launch pad. In both of those cases, well, let me talk about the backup number 2. The T0 for that day would be 11:21 a.m. for a launch, and that would be an instantaneous window. And you can see the pattern. We move about 22 minutes early every single day that we delay from this particular T0 today. And of course, that's orbital mechanics. We've got time. You want to explain that one?
Yeah, sure. So the international. Oh. Yeah, no, you got to wait for the plane of the orbit of the station to cross overhead, and it just works out each day that it's a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, if it had come overhead a couple minutes earlier today, they would have been able to launch. The weather would have been clear.
I just mentioned the backup opportunities. One thing about both of these next launch opportunities, unfortunately, we're going to really have our eyes set on the ascent corridor, because now there is a trough that is approaching a line of storms coming across the eastern part of the U.S., and it is going to make its way out into the ocean, and so that could disturb the weather along the ascent corridor, which is an area where if Dragon were to suffer some kind of anomaly, something that wasn't expected and needed to come off the top of the rocket, it would splash down along the ascent corridor. There's concern about the sea states, right? How much it's sloshing around is going to be out there in the ocean. You need good conditions, a baseline of conditions, in order to pull astronauts out of a floating capsule with a helicopter and a boat.
Yeah, it just shows the complexity, the scale of the problem that you're dealing with. It's not a forecast at a particular point, you know, on the surface of the Earth, you know, at the launch pad. It's, if you imagine this 3D trajectory of the rocket's path going up to orbit, you've got to clear all of that for weather, but not just clouds and rain and severe thunderstorms, but like wind shear and drastic changes in the wind direction can create problems for the rocket. And then, in case, you know, there was a need to return them early or to abort, you also have to clear the weather on the surface along that path as well. You know, just an immense amount of respect for the teams, you know, both at SpaceX and also at the, you know, the Space Launch Delta 45 over on the Space Force side, the weather shop there, in trying to put their arms around all of this. Like I said, weather is really complex, and they do a fantastic job. But, you know, if we got a chance, 90% chance, you take it all the way to the end and see what Mother Nature gives you.
And I'm sure, as an astronaut, when it's your arse in the seat, you want that level of awareness, that level of scrutiny given to the weather throughout the trajectory, throughout the launch area and the launch period.
Oh yeah, you know, the immense respect for them, knowing that their job is watching my back. And
Dragon SpaceX propellant offload update, estimating 37 more minutes for propellant offload.
Dragon copy. 37 more minutes.
The clock ticks slowly.
Hope you got 37 minutes worth of stories, Nick.
But I, you know, like I was saying, it just takes so much to do that when you're sitting in that seat there, if you get the call for a scrub, there's no question. It's, you guys are the experts. This is the safest thing for us to do right now, and you're all in. You're not second guessing.
But you also have that moment, like when we were standing out there, you're like, oh.
There's the disappointment. There's the knowing you're going to have to go through this all again. I mean, the disappointment not just for the crews, but, you know, the team that's in quarantine with the crew.